The story begins on a battlefield with a young knight covered in blood smiling as he tries to catch his breath. Several death beams are blasted at him and his men all of a sudden, suggesting that the battle is definitely not over. The hero stands tall in the explosions, feeling proud that they even made it this far, but they're not done yet. If they can just beat this last force before them, they can win the war. Sadly, just as he's conceiving the thought, a powerful red beam of energy blasts right through him. This laser of death goes through him before he can even realize it, and as he slowly looks down with his bloodshot eyes, he sees the gaping hole in the middle of his trunk. He stares at the massive hole in his chest in disbelief as it burns away rapidly and then falls to his knees in an instant. At that moment, he finally comes to terms with what just happened and the reality dawns on him. It's a fatal blow and there's sadly no coming out of this one, so the hero falls flat on his face and surrenders to death just like his comrades, whose corpses are now scattered all over the battlefield. In his final moments, he lies in a huge pool of his own blood and realizes that his story will end with him not being able to do anything. Just thinking about it drains him even more, and as there's nothing he can do now, he just remains still, allowing his life to flash before his eyes. So, how did this promising young warrior end up in this tragic situation? Well, it all started one day when an unknown threat suddenly appeared in their world and destroyed an entire continent. The one responsible for this calamity became known as the Liquidator, the archenemy of mankind. This celestial world ender went on a rampage, and so a group of warriors was created to protect mankind. This team of heroes included a man named Brian Miller, who survived a giant meteorite without a scratch, and he became known as the world-protecting shield. The second member of this team of guardians was a great sage said to possess power equal to an entire division, and she was known as Bella Albright, the great sage. The team also included Jacob Bloomfield, the divine archer, who took down a high-level dragon in a single shot. But these weren't the only heroes assembled to protect the world, because the strongest swordsman to ever come into existence was also on their team. Her name was Amy White, and she was known as the Sword Saint for her power. From the little we know about these heroes, it's no wonder why they were considered humanity's best hope. But they weren't the only ones fighting against the Liquidator, because there was another group, known as the Support Unit, which our protagonists belonged to. As you can imagine, they were put in this second team because there wasn't really anything extraordinary about them, and sadly, they were merely sacrificial pawns. The protagonist, Gray Lee, a regular foot soldier, rapidly bleeds out in the middle of the rubble, but all he can think about in his last moments is how the superhuman defenders of humanity are truly on another level. He watches them in awe as they continue to wage war on the Liquidator. Gray Lee knew that the graduates of the World Union Academy were amazing even before now, but he never knew that the difference between him and the elite soldiers would be so large. Well, apparently, it is because the four of them are still in the fight while he's lying in the dirt with a few missing organs in his chest. The situation makes him wonder if it even matters whether the support unit was there or not. The team of heroes appear to be doing just fine without them, which enrages him even more. Gray Lee grinds his teeth in anger, recalling how he and his teammates equally trained very hard, only to end up as collateral damage. Tears run down his face as the thoughts flood his mind, but there's nothing he can do now. Meanwhile, the heroes continue their onslaught, and Amy White unleashes a myriad of attacks that eventually do some damage to the Liquidator. The Celestial Force is actually surprised that they managed to hurt him, and he doesn't take it very well. So, he figures that it's time to stop messing around with them, and with this in mind, he creates 2 power balls of energy from his wings and unleashes 2 devastating surges of energy that absolutely decimate the heroes in the blink of an eye. The Guardians are butchered by the Liquidator's overwhelming blast, and upon seeing this, Gray's eyes widen in horror and disbelief. He just witnessed the archenemy of humanity wipe out the defenders of the Earth with a single blow, so it's not an easy thing to process. Even worse, the Liquidator said that he'd been playing around until now, so in that moment, the protagonist is convinced that there's absolutely no way they can win this war. To be honest, that should have been pretty obvious when this overpowered angel of death made his debut on Earth by destroying a whole continent. Anyway, the MC continues to weep as he awaits his demise, but then all of a sudden, he realizes that he shouldn't even still be alive right now. It's been a while since his heart got pierced, and for some reason he's still alive, so he looks down at his reflection in the blood, and that's when he hears the voice. The voice claims that he's finally found him and then tells Gray to come forth and wield great power. All of a sudden, the MC finds himself standing in the middle of a strange place and begins to wonder what's going on. He figures that this might be the afterlife, but feels that it's a bit barren if that's the case. The wide-eyed soldier looks around a bit, and that's when he spots a strange hooded being sitting cross-legged on what appears to be a throne. Gray looks over at the celestial being, asking who he is, so the alien-like figure simply assures him that he is not dead. The being tells him that his body's physical wounds have already healed, which sounds really impossible since he saw the fatal wound in his chest very clearly. Either way, he asks the alien if he was the one that healed him, but the big guy doesn't take credit for it. Instead, he informs Gray that he was healed by his own power. Surely none of this makes any sense to the foot soldier, and sadly, this celestial creature can't explain it to him either. Apparently, this alien is also unable to properly analyze Gray Lee's true power. However, what he can tell the MC for sure is that his power is stronger than what the Liquidator possesses, but that's only if he can control it properly. At this point, I'd start looking for the hidden cameras around if I were him, because this all sounds like one big prank. But I'm not the MC, so back to the story. Gray asks the hooded being if this means that they have a shot at winning this war. Sadly, the alien admits that he doesn't know the answer to that question and that he wouldn't have high hopes either. However, he also believes that they ought to get rid of the Liquidator together. As soon as he says this, Gray isn't given a single second to process it before the black alien punches another hole right through him. After doing this, he tells Gray that he can now leave, promising to lend the MC the power he possesses to help him. At this point, we see the magic circle with a clock glowing brightly in front of Gray's chest, so it's pretty clear that our boy has just got a major upgrade in the power department. He wakes up on the battlefield right after his encounter with the strange alien and immediately gets back on his feet. Gray picks up his sword and is shocked when he sees that it's now completely surrounded with a strange power. The blade crackles with lightning, like energy, so he wonders what it is, and the voice reveals that it's his own power manifesting. As for the alien's power, it cannot be seen with the naked eye, so he explains this to Gray. Our boy is excited about this new power, especially since he literally just cheated death, and since the Liquidator is still around, he decides to test out his new abilities on the ruthless Angel of Death. The evil alien suddenly senses something coming at him, and by the time he turns around, Gray is already on him. Our boy attacks with a brutal slash of his menacing sword, and the Liquidator almost seems horrified by his presence. The evil alien can't believe what is going on because he didn't think there was any powerful opponent left. He can sense the power within our boy, so he knows how dangerous Gray is. This is confirmed when the hero lands a hit that does some real damage, and this boosts his confidence a lot, so he charges in for another swing and even starts to get cocky, feeling that he is stronger than the Liquidator. However, the World Ender quickly reminds Gray why he should not be underestimated. Just like he did with the Guardians of Earth earlier, the Liquidator uses a single slash to split Gray in two. It happens so fast that he doesn't even feel it immediately, and by the time our boy looks down, he's horrified to see that his legs are no longer connected to his torso. The Liquidator uses this killer blow on him, but also commends Gray for being able to force him to throw everything he's got. Apparently, the Liquidator thinks that slicing the MC in half will be enough to kill him, so he turns around, preparing to fly away. But then, in a shocking twist, the same energy that engulfed the sword earlier flows out and expands, covering Gray's entire body and enabling him to heal in a split second. Then, the sword increases incredibly until it's so massive that even the Liquidator is bewildered. The evil alien already knows that Gray is about to land a devastating blow, so he quickly creates a shield to protect him, as he's no longer even sure that this opponent is even human. Our boy gets fused with the energy like a host and a symbiote, and with a murderous glow in his eyes, he takes a terrifying swing at the Liquidator. The alien manages to block this attack using his shield, but it doesn't take long for Gray to overwhelm him and destroy it with a mind-bending beam of energy. The blast sends the Liquidator flying, and even though he doesn't have any expression on his face, you can tell that he's starting to get really afraid of our boy. And so, with the battle taking a drastic turn, Gray Lee unleashes another haymaker, admitting that he also isn't sure if he's human anymore. Despite Gray Lee's ferocious strike, when the dust clears, he finds that the Liquidator is still very much in the fight. He's perplexed by this and doesn't even get how the alien is still alive after taking such a hit. As such, he admits that the Liquidator's strength is truly something out of this world. Now the two powerhouses stand face to face against each other, and mankind's archenemy is still trying to catch his breath. Sure, he's still in the fight, but after seeing what Gray can do, he's not even sure how to attack. On the other hand, the newest hero from Earth is feeling pretty confident that he can win. So, he looks at the Liquidator dead in his alien eyes and vows to crush him over and over until he's dead. You can tell that he's not even bluffing about this from the look in his eyes, and right after squaring up with the World Destroyer, he unleashes another devastating slash from his mighty sword. The Liquidator tries to dodge it, but he gets hit hard, and this time around, he even bleeds. He groans in agony, calling Gray Lee a monster, but even though he's suffering right now, he has no intention of giving up, and so once again, he decides to stop messing around and go all out against this human hero. The Liquidator heals himself and activates his secret weapon. His entire body begins to glow even more than before, and multiple sets of wings shoot out of his back. The alien also somehow manages to make everywhere go dark and tells the hero that his time is up. That's when Gray looks up in shock to see that the guy turned day into night. The World Ender continues to activate his killer move, and it's starting to look like the tables are about to turn again. However, Gray Lee is not deterred by the Liquidator's little magic trick, and so he charges at the enemy once again with his massive sword to end the fight for good. Shockingly, this time around, he's not able to penetrate the alien's shield despite pumping a lot of energy into his sword. His attack simply bounces off the barrier, leaving him pretty taken aback for a second. He's still trying to understand what's going on when the Liquidator explains it to him. The World Ender tells him that all his attacks are futile because within this plane of true dusk, nothing is capable of harming him. At this point, the liquidator is feeling invincible. He casually advises our boy to stop his useless resistance and take a look at the stars. Hearing this, our boy looks up at the sky in horror, and his pupils continue to dilate over and over as he stares at the bright light up there. The alien talks about how beautiful it is while Gray is just modified because he knows that the bright light isn't just for show. Sure enough, the powerful ray of death shoots down on him and a cataclysmic explosion follows immediately. After the blast, the dust and smoke slowly clear, revealing the gigantic crater in the ground. The hole is so big that you'd think an asteroid crashed there. Seeing this, the alien is convinced that the human warrior will not be able to revive himself this time around because he is most likely pulverized to dust already. That's what he thought though, but he quickly realized how wrong he was. All of a sudden, bolts of lightning start to appear in front of the crater. The energy rapidly builds up, leaving the liquidator bewildered once again. He stares at the ball of energy as it enlarges and then, some kind of magic shield with a clock-like appearance pops up right in front of the alien. Upon seeing this, the liquidator instantly recognizes it and then, the same voice that called out to Gray before, speaks up. The voice is impressed by the great amount of power that the liquidator has gathered and suggests that it should be enough to take him back. At this point, a wave of horror washes over the alien invader because this voice belongs to the one called Kronos. The liquidator refuses to believe it, and that's when the black celestial being calls upon Gray Lee. He calls upon the hero, who wields great power and decides to use all of his power to send our boy back to the past. Of course, the liquidator is furious when he hears this because he knows that it's all part of Kronos' master plan to destroy him. He curses at the black alien for saving Gray, but of course, that doesn't really do anything. Kronos then fulfills his promise by turning back the hands of time, claiming that this is all he can do for the human hero. By sending Gray back to the past, Kronos basically entrusts the gate of the human world to him. Everything fades out afterward, and after it all turns white, our hero suddenly wakes up in the middle of a field. As soon as he opens his eyes, he takes a look around, wondering where he is. That's when he spots the small village down the hill in the distance, and is even more stunned because it just so happens that it's his hometown, Renato Village. Gray is extremely perplexed by this since it doesn't make any sense. The last time he checked, his village had been destroyed for 15 years, so he knows that it shouldn't be here. But then again, in his confusion, he recalls what Kronos said to him on the battlefield. He remembers that the black alien god promised to send him back in time, so after putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, Gray realizes that he's actually in the past. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when he feels a sharp sting in his hand. He takes a look at his bandaged forearm and immediately remembers having this injury. The wound is from the time when he was being picked on by someone named Belder and a few other bullies. Gray starts trembling in fear at the thought of those bullies. He remembers how badly they beat him up, and he's not ready to go through that again. Unfortunately, he also remembers how strong they were, so he's afraid that he won't be able to beat them. Our boy has been so traumatized by his bullies that just thinking about it sends him into a panic attack. He closes his eyes and eventually calms himself down. From the look of things, it appears that he never even left the village, so he concludes that defeating the liquidator was probably just a dream. With this in mind, he accepts his fate and makes his way back to the village. He doesn't want to get hurt by the bullies, so he decides to come up with a plan for them when he's feeling stronger. Unfortunately, on the way back home, he runs into the very same bullies in the bush path. He can't believe how bad his luck is, so he just stares at them with a blank expression on his face. We're finally introduced to the leader of the gang, Belder. He claims that they've actually been looking for our boy and complains about how Gray made him go through a lot of trouble to find him. At this point, the MC is probably wishing he could just disappear or teleport elsewhere, but sadly that's not happening. Belder suddenly tosses a sword at his feet and tells Gray to pick it up. Our boy is still in a daze as he's trying to understand what's really happening here, so Belder warns him not to act dumb. And so, he bluntly tells the MC that he wants to have a mock battle, but Gray still doesn't pick up the sword. Instead, he politely declines the invitation, explaining that his injury hasn't fully healed yet. He then thanks the bullies for the offer and tells them he's not joining them till his wounds heal. Of course, these goons aren't the kind to take no for an answer. Belder insists that they have the mock battle, assuring him that it's safe since the blade is blunt. They start moving closer to him like a pack of wolves around injured prey, but Gray refuses to pick the sword. He insists that a blade is still a big chunk of iron no matter how blunt it is, and that it can still be very dangerous, but Belder finally runs out of patience. The bully gets fed up and tells Gray to shut up, claiming that he has no right to say no to him. He makes this clear to our boy and then tells him that he's free to fight without a weapon if he doesn't like swords. Before Gray can even process this, Belder charges at him with his blade, and it actually baffles him because the guy doesn't even mind attacking him when he's unarmed. What the hell happened to this being a mock battle? It's pretty clear now that there's no running from this, so Gray decides that it's time to get his head in the game. Before he was sent back, a former military doctor gave him a piece of advice. It turns out that the reason for Gray's lack of improvement in his swordsmanship was due to an injury he sustained as a child. Thinking about it now, the MC realizes that this might actually be where his life as a loser began. Belder speeds toward him like a runaway train, and just as he's about to land the hit, our boy somehow manages to dodge it by reflex. He's even shocked that he managed to evade a hit and begins to wonder if Belder's strikes were always this slow. Enraged by the first miss, Belder goes on for another swing, only for Gray to dodge it yet again. After avoiding getting hit for the third time in a row, our boy finally realizes that Belder isn't slow. The bully also starts getting frustrated by the fact that he can't even land a single hit, so he curses at Gray in annoyance. Unfortunately, his anger can't even help him now, because he just misses yet again, and so our boy realizes that he's actually the one who's gotten faster. The other bullies are stunned when they see how fast the guy is all of a sudden. It's as if he's a completely different person now, so they all watch in amazement as he makes a fool out of Belder. After dodging everything the guy threw at him, our boy finally decides to pick up the sword. He may not have his old body anymore, but he still has the memories of the battles he has fought. Gray bends down to pick the sword and Belder takes the chance to charge at him from behind. Unfortunately for him, Gray casually deflects him with a single swing of his own sword. He sends the bully flying with this strike, and he's even surprised that one nonchalant strike was enough to throw his almighty bully off his feet. Right now, the guy is starting to look a lot like an amateur, so he's starting to think it wouldn't be fair for him to fight him. But then again, he remembers everything that Belder's gang put him through, so he decides that the ringleader doesn't even deserve his pity. After all, it's these same pieces of trash who tormented him because he couldn't fight. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore, so he's more than happy to flex his new skills. He uses another effortless swing to disarm Belder, and after seeing how easily the sword left his hand, he realizes that the bully is actually worse than an amateur. Gray suggests that Belder hasn't been trained on how to receive a blow from a sword. This doesn't matter though. After all, these bullies were the same ones who taught him it's totally safe to beat someone with a sword as long as its blade has been dulled. And so our boy takes a big swing of the so-called blunt sword, and it still somehow manages to cut Belder's body open. The guy's eyes widen in horror as the blood from his shoulder splashes all over his face. He's in utter disbelief, but what's more is the severe pain. He suffers so much that he's forced down to his knees. Belder shouts in pain while Gray Lee just freezes in shock because he's equally stunned by what just happened. The blade was supposed to be dulled, so he doesn't get how it still managed to cut the troublemaker. In his confusion, he takes another look at the blade to check if it's really the case, and he confirms that it is actually blunt. As such, Gray realizes that he might have even killed Belder with that slash if he had actually given him a sharp sword. Our boy panics for a second, knowing that he could have killed these kids, but then again, they're the same meatheads who made his life at the village miserable. So, he decides to beat Belder up with the flat surface of the blade instead. This way, he can keep the sword blunt while getting his revenge. He whacks the bully in the face with it, sending him to the ground once again. Belder is now terrified, so our boy hovers over him, wondering why he's screaming so much. He asks the gang leader what's wrong and reminds him that he's the one who said the blunt sword is safe. At this point, Belder just sits there, covering his bleeding nose as Gray walks over to him slowly. The terrified bully looks to the side and sees his goons just standing there, so he snaps at them, ordering that they attack our boy. It's quite funny that Belder would even think that his minions can beat Gray after the same guy just wiped the floor with him. As you can imagine, they're reluctant to even go near him, seeing how strong he's gotten all of a sudden, but they eventually agree to go at him together, thinking they can overpower him this way. The troublemakers charge at our boy at the same time, and Gray just feels sorry for them. He's surprised that they're dumb enough to come at him for another round after what he just did to their leader, but of course, he has no choice but to beat them up too. Belder furiously orders them to kill our boy, as they attack him from all alongs, and this just pisses the MC off. He was going to overlook their misbehavior this time around, but since they clearly all want a taste of his new skills, he decides to show them what he can do. A few moments later, Belder and his goons are all on their knees with swollen faces. They've been so badly beaten that there's steam coming off their bodies and looking at them now. Gray is baffled that these are the same guys he's been so scared of. He remembers that these guys are the ones from the Saria swordsmanship dojo, so he asks to confirm if that's the case, and Belder explains that he's kinda correct. Apparently, they felt like they had gotten strong enough, so they haven't been going to the dojo lately. It's pretty baffling for Gray when he hears them say this, because he can't believe that their current level can be considered strong enough. With this in mind, he figures that he shouldn't expect much from the dojo itself, seeing the kind of students it produced. However, he still believes that it might be useful to him, and so he asks them to introduce him to this dojo they attend. After all, he heard that it's by referral only and would like them to invite him. For some reason, Belder is not really excited to bring Gray in because he'll be too embarrassed if he told his master that he lost a sword fight. He suggests that our boy find someone else to invite him, but he's in no mood to be denied. So, since Belder doesn't want to complain, he decides that they resume their mock fight instead. Before he can even say anything after that, the bully agrees to introduce Gray and starts running toward the dojo, leaving his buddies behind even. Eventually, they're all back in the village, and that's when Belder finally asks Gray why he actually wants to go to the dojo. Apparently, this very dojo has a recommendation slot for the academy, and when our boy asks about it, Belder admits that he also heard something like that. As such, our boy explains that this is the reason he wants to go, by one of Belder's buddies feels that he's already strong enough without going to the academy. Sadly, Gray knows that his current state is not going to be enough to defeat the Liquidator. Even the world's strongest lineup was no match for the World Ender. He remembers the battle, how the Liquidator wiped out all of the Guardians with a single blast. Gray recalls how he couldn't even scratch the alien when he got serious despite using the power that Kronos talked about. Just thinking about it makes him really anxious because he doesn't even know how strong he has to be able to defeat the Liquidator. It bugs him a lot, but at the same time, it's not like he doesn't have any clues. He remembers being able to control the dark power even if it was just for a split second. What he focused on at that moment was the swordsmanship taught to him by the Sword Saint. Gray believes that the outcome of his battle with the Liquidator might have been different if he had spent more time training in the same conditions as the Sword Saint. The hero realizes that this must be the reason why Kronos sent him back to the past. Gray eventually gets to meet the dojo master, but not before she punishes Belder and the rest for getting their asses whooped at her trying to pick on a civilian with the techniques she taught them. This is Saria, the swordsmanship dojo instructor, and right now, she's really disappointed in her students. Belder tries to tell her that it was a mock battle and not them picking on Gray, but she silences him immediately by sending him across the room with a single strike of her sword. The others start trembling at this point, and Saria continues to scold him for making excuses. After all, if beating up an unarmed person is a mock battle, then what she just did to him can be called the same. And just like that, Saria kicks Belder and his gang out of her dojo for good. Of course, they don't even protest because things would get worse for them, so they just run for their lives. After sending them away, Saria apologizes to Gray for all the trouble her former students caused him, but he assures her that there's no need to worry about that, and she thanks him for letting it slide. Once that's out of the way, she goes straight to the point, asking if he wants to get recommended to the academy. When he affirms this, she explains that she needs to confirm his abilities before she can do that. Gray understands this perfectly, so he braces himself for the test to come. Saria tells him that he's free to have the first move and encourages him to come at him whenever he's ready. Sure enough, the hero charges at her in a flash with several powerful slashes that actually surprise the dojo master. She can tell that his swordsmanship is quite practical for his age, and it's as if he's been through countless battles before from the way he's moving. Saria tries to counter a follow-up strike, but Gray just slips under and goes in from the side with blazing speed, which makes her certain that Belder and the others are no match for him. To her, Gray's style is mostly self-taught, but in the middle of each move, she gets a glimpse of swordplay that was taught at the academy, so it makes her wonder if someone there taught him. What she knows for sure is that he's a diamond in the rough with a lot of talent. After a short but intense defending, Sarah decides that it's time to wrap things up, so she charges at him, hoping to overpower him with ease, but he deflects her strike, leaving her quite shocked. She finds it strange that he was able to counter her like that because she expected him to falter eventually. Unfortunately for her, that's not the case because Gray Lee is matching her every move. She just wanted to test his skills a little, but now, she's found herself fighting with everything she's got. Even worse, she realizes that she's actually so afraid of this kid right now. There's a terrifying glint in his eyes all of a sudden, and Saria doesn't know how to handle the overwhelming feeling she's having all of a sudden. Gray taps into that dark energy for a second, which allows him to force the dojo master back for the first time. Meanwhile, Saria refuses to back down. She thought she sensed something ominous just now, but she can't see it anymore, so she concludes that the kid just took a really wild swing to scare her. With this renewed confidence, she goes in for another round to end the sparring session for good. Just when she thinks she's about to land a hit, she's shocked to see that her sword has been slashed. Saria stares at the broken sword in horror and disbelief. The other half is lying on the other side of the dojo, and even our boy is overwhelmed by what just happened. What he just felt is the same sensation as back then on the battlefield when he can feel the dark energy coursing through him, and he's shocked because he didn't think that he has that power even now. While he's still trying to figure it out, she feels the dark energy overwhelm him all of a sudden. The sting is so painful that he falls to his knees like he just had a heart attack, and even Saria starts to get worried about him. With a worried look on her face, she asks him if he's alright, but he can't even answer since he's still fighting for his life. Apparently, his body failed to keep up with the dark power he exerted just now, and so now he's trying to recover. After a few seconds, the pain subsides and he's able to get back on his feet, so he tells her that he's okay. He could barely stand a few moments ago, so after that experience, he realizes that he shouldn't use this power carelessly. Unfamiliar with this situation, Gray wonders if it would be a good idea to tell Saria about his power. But after seeing the puzzled and judgmental look on her face, he decides that it's best not to bother. Even if he told her, she probably won't believe, and it's not like he can control the power to prove what he's saying, so there's no point telling her. With this in mind, he forces a nervous laugh and claims that he just got carried away, which leaves the dojo instructor speechless and baffled by him. Right now, she's still trying to wrap her head around how this kid managed to cut her sword with a dull wooden sword. It's logically impossible, and she doesn't even think he knows what a big deal it actually is. Just then, Saria starts staring at him suspiciously, and when he notices, he nervously asks if there's something wrong. She can tell that he's hiding something and doesn't want to talk about the wooden sword he cut in two in one blow, so she lets it slide and changes the topic back the academy recommendation he asked for. Gray confirms this once more, claiming that he hears she could give him one. In response, Saria admits that she actually could give him a recommendation to the kingdom's finest educational institution, the Royal Academy of Swordsmanship. However, she tells him that she cannot recommend that he go there. Her next statement comes like a blow below the belt to our boy as she tells him that he's not suited for that place. Gray starts beating himself up for it the moment she says this, thinking about how he always knew he wasn't strong enough yet. After all, he could hardly do anything against her except in that last moment, so he's not surprised that she's not impressed enough. He's still feeling sorry for himself when she completes her statement, informing him that the place he should aim for is the World Union Academy, and his eyes almost pop out of their sockets when he hears this twist. Apparently, Saria doesn't want him going to the kingdom's finest institute, because she believes that he belongs in the world's finest institution. Our boy is blown away just thinking about that place because it's the same institution where the Sword Saint and the other heroes came from. He never imagined that someone like him could even get accepted there, and Saria assures him that it's not impossible. However, his body is nowhere near fit enough to be a swordsman, and so it's going to be a stretch right now. In the Royal Academy, she feels that he'll be able to take it with his skills, but it just won't cut it in the World Union Academy. And so, she's really perplexed by the young man in front of her, because she doesn't get how on earth someone can acquire such skills with a feeble body like his. Gray Lee knows that she's right. Everybody from that academy is a genuine monster, so with a body like this, he doesn't even stand a chance of competing with them. Saria doesn't hear what he's thinking, but from the look on his face, she can tell that he's already feeling defeated. So, she asks him why he's giving up when there are still 9 months until the entrance exam. It means he's got a shot, but he also feels that 9 months is not enough, and the dojo instructor agrees with him. It's actually not enough, but she encourages him to trust her. Clearly, Saria wants to take him as her student for the next 9 months, but she also needs to know if he's ready to suffer for that long. Obviously, he doesn't want to suffer. I mean, no one does, but he knows that he needs to, so he makes up his mind and asks Saria to take him in for the next 9 months. The dojo instructor is excited to hear him say this, claiming that it's a great answer. But the happy look is quickly replaced by a terrifying grin that scares Gray, and that's when she decides that it's time to begin his hell. Our boy's intense training begins from day one, and after pushing his physical abilities to the limit, Saria pumps him full of proteins. She makes him train even when he's not in the mood and forces him to eat whether he likes it or not. This becomes his life from the day he stepped into the dojo for the first time, and 8 months later, Gray Lee's physical appearance is completely transformed. All of his muscles are finally defined with pronounced chest and arms, popping deltoids and chiseled abs. His 8 months of hell really pays off, and Saria is delighted to say that he's grown a lot more muscular. He's so ripped now that she doesn't even think she has anything to teach him anymore. And so, she encourages him to go out there with confidence. Gray is glad to hear that she's proud of him and the progress they've made, but he doesn't get why she's sending him out now when there's still a month until the exam. So, she explains to him how difficult it can be to take an exam in a place he's not used to, which is why she feels that it's best to get there early. While he's still trying to wrap his head around it, she hands him a bag of coins, claiming that it's enough money of the trip and a month's worth of food. Gray is reluctant to take the money from her, feeling that going a month before the exam is too soon. It's almost as if she's trying to chase him out of the village all of a sudden, and when he says this, she just laughs, feeling that he's overthinking it. Our boy heard rumors of an ogre's nest that was recently found near the village, and he's aware that there are hardly any guards in the village. At this point, Saria nervously admits that she heard about that too, but she assures him that it has nothing to do with them. She tries to convince him, but he's just not buying it. The dojo instructor feels that there's nothing to worry about since the royal capital will soon send help to them. That being said, she encourages Gray to head to the exam without any worries. Our boy keeps staring at her with a blank expression on his face even after she says all of this because he doesn't believe her. He already knows that no help will ever come to this village because he's seen the future. He's literally lived it. Gray knows that his master will lose her life right before the village is destroyed. Apparently, they said she was killed when she went to kill the ogre by herself, so he knows how everything is going to play out if he doesn't do anything about it. Even though he has no intention of leaving, he tells her that he'll be leaving. Saria is glad to hear this and prays for him to pass his exam. After successfully convincing her student to leave the village, Saria sneaks out to the forest later that night. From the bloody skeleton remains scattered all over the place, you can tell that this is a dangerous region with some deadly creatures. The dojo instructor has obviously come to hunt down the ogre just like our boy predicted. According to the scout's report, the nest is right over here, so all she has to do to find it is follow the trail of blood on the ground. Just as she's about to start moving closer, a voice calls out to her, asking where she's going. She looks up the tree and is shocked to see Gray smiling down at her from a very high branch. She's dumbfounded when she sees him, and the smirk is immediately plastered on his face because he just caught her right in the act. She asks him why he's even here because as far as she's concerned, he should already be on his way to the academy by now. And before she can even try to scold him, he jumps down from the tree and stops her right there. Gray informs her that he's the one who should be asking the question since she told him that the ogre nests would be taken care of by the army from the royal capital. Of course, Saria quickly comes up with an excuse, claiming that the guys at the capital said they couldn't come because of some emergency over there. And for that reason, she decided to handle the ogre nests by herself. After all, she believes that she's more than capable of handling the situation by herself. Saria smirks after saying this, claiming that she knows the strength of the nest already thanks to the report from the scouts. She reveals that the boss of the nest is an elite ogre, and the nest itself holds around 40 to 50 monsters in total according to the reports she got. The dojo master admits that that number of minions will be pretty tricky, but still, she's confident that she can take them out all by herself. Upon hearing all she has to say, the gears in Gray's head begin to turn as he ponders on the strength of an elite ogre. On its own, the monster isn't actually that strong, but it turns out that the ogre's real strength lies in its intelligence and leadership. Considering the risk of getting surrounded, our boy concludes that it would be suicidal to even try to fight the monsters alone. He's lived through this very event before, so he knows how it plays out, which is why he's convinced that Saria will not make it out alive if he allows her to go on this mission alone. And if she dies, then the entire village will go on to be destroyed by the same monsters. And this is something he cannot let happen, not when he's been given a second chance to actually change things. The hero has seen that tragic future with his own eyes, and it's still a very fresh memory, which is why, after pondering for a moment, he suddenly asks his master to take him with her. Without even thinking about it, Saria shakes her head in refusal, insisting that she will be able to handle it by herself. Of course, Gray wouldn't want to blow his cover and tell her that he knows she's going to die because he's from the future. So, he takes another approach to try to change her mind, claiming that this could be his first chance to gain some real combat experience. After all, it's exactly what he needs to put his training to the test, so he makes his request once again, suggesting that Saria thinks he's just going to get in ready during the mission. Of course, his master doesn't see him as a liability in battle, and she's sure that he also knows that too. I mean, she can't even beat him in a mock battle anymore. That's how good he's become. However, she also makes it clear to him that nobody knows what might happen in a real fight, especially when it's a monster's nest that suddenly formed like the one they're faced with. For a dangerous job like this, the dojo master believes that it's best for him to wait until he has a bit more experience in real fights that are less risky. At this point, Gray is starting to feel pretty defeated because he really thought he was going to change her mind. Sadly, she insists on going alone, so he's forced to his last option. He suddenly tells her that he has an idea, and this gets her pretty curious immediately, and that's when he challenges her to a fight out of the blue. Apparently, this plan involves him knocking her out cold so he can deal with the ogre by himself. He informs Saria of his intentions as he points his sword at her face. The white-haired master just smiles as she tries to process what the hell he just told her. She stands still for a couple seconds, probably thinking he would rethink his decision, but Gray stands his ground and keeps the tip of his sword inches away from her face. At this point, it's pretty clear that she can't get him to go away, and she doesn't actually want to fight him, so she just shuts her eyes and surrenders. Saria agrees to take him along but makes him promise her that he'll come back alive no matter what. Upon hearing these words, our boy finally lowers his blade and then assures her that he definitely plans to come back from this mission. So he makes Saria promise him the same thing, pleading with her to not die in the ogre's nest, and of course, she's very confident that it's not going to happen. Once on the same page, the master and student follow the trail of blood leading to the ogre's nest and officially begin the hunt. Soon, they arrive close to a valley, and from afar, they notice that the terrain leaves no room for escape. If they go in, they can easily get trapped and slaughtered, but Saria is more concerned about the monsters in there. She claims that the minions have a lot of confidence building their best in this kind of location, so Gray quickly reminds her that they won't be able to escape either. He senses that his master might be getting a little cocky, so he also points out the fact that they're up against intelligent monsters and not just dumb beasts. As such, he suggests that it's better to be more cautious with their approach, and Saria agrees with him. The two hide behind a big rock and quietly scan the tent from afar. After looking around for a bit, they still can't pick out the boss anywhere, so Saria suggests that it's probably in one of the tents. As far as she's concerned, that's a good thing, because at least they can quickly take out some of the minions and reduce the number before the boss comes out. With this in mind, she tells Gray to take out the enemies on one side while she attacks from the other side. At the moment, the monsters still have no idea that they're about to be ambushed, so they're still going about their business. Saria and Gray Lee take out their weapons and spring into action. The first monster to be unalived sees the white-haired swordmaster coming at him, but before he can react, she takes his head right off with a single slash. Well, this first attack alerts the others, so all their hopes of being stealthy are instantly dashed. The horde of red-eyed ogres roar at the two swordsmen, but of course, they're no match for our boy. Without even tapping into his dark powers, Gray casually slices through the monsters with ease like a cold-hearted butcher. He dismembers the ogres with lightning-fast strikes, and his master also finds it's pretty easy to take out all the monsters on her side. And so, after only a few minutes, the nest is filled with bloody ogre corpses scattered around. The two wipe out the first wave with ease, and Saria is really impressed by Gray's skills. She's quite surprised by how good he is and begins to wonder if this is really his first time on a battlefield. The dojo instructor is so intrigued that she almost gets distracted while teasing him, but our boy is locked in right now, so he urges her to stay alert, revealing that this is just the start of the battle. Gray stares at the dead ogres lying around and starts to get this strange feeling. The first fight was way too easy, so he finds it weird that the monsters were so weak. It's baffling because he is sure that Saria would have been able to take them out just as easily even if she was alone. It doesn't make any sense because in the original story she was killed in this very nest. At this point, Gray realizes that something really horrifying must be inside that tent. He peeks into the dark tent as the thought crosses his mind, and that's when a terrifying pair of eyes glare at him from the darkness. Gray's eyes pop out in fear as chills run down his spine, and without even thinking about it, he shouts for them to get the hell out of there. Our boy tells his master that they have to leave immediately, urging her to run away with him, but the cocky sword master feels that he's exaggerating. She asks him what's wrong, feeling that there's no need to retreat, but after seeing the look of horror on his face, she doesn't think twice before running after him. Now, they're both running out of the nest as fast as their legs can carry them, but their efforts prove futile very quickly because all of a sudden, a figure appears to leap into the air right above them to intercept them. The green-skinned creature blocks their path, landing right in front of them, and our boy begins to panic even more. Saria, on the other hand, gets really excited because she thinks she's finally getting her chance to face the elite ogre. Unlike the weak minions they wiped out a while ago, this ogre is a lot larger with a big helm and a massive axe, big enough to chop down trees with a single swing. Rather than being terrified, the dojo master goes on and on about how honored she feels that the boss came to them itself. In a shocking twist, this giant ogre on steroids isn't even the boss, and Gray is the one who breaks the news to her. It turns out that the real boss is even far more powerful than the juggernaut standing in front of them. At this point, Saria turns around to see the army of orges charging at them with the real boss standing at the back, exerting an overwhelming surge of power from his body. For the first time, the white-haired swordmaster feels afraid, and before she can even process all her emotions, they're surrounded by a swarm of axe-wielding orges. Despite being trapped, she remains immobilized by the overwhelming power radiating from the boss. It's at this point that Gray reveals they're up against something far stronger than the elite ogre. What they have on their hands right now is an ogre general, and the nest they just attacked belongs to the ruthless green abomination. Saria finally snaps out of her daze and admits that an ogre general is not a monster they can handle on their own. It's now pretty clear why the entire village got wiped out, sadly. It looks like history is about to repeat itself because they're currently outnumbered and outgunned. Seeing how dire the situation is, Saria suggests that they just kill the brute in front of them and keep running. Without any hesitation, she desperately charges at the helmed ogre with her sword, hoping to quickly finish him off, but the guy is no pushover either. He blocks the first strikes, which surprises Saria, but she goes again and is able to land a hit on his shoulder. Sadly, her excitement quickly disappears as she watches the wound heal rapidly right before her eyes. As if this guy wasn't tough enough, he also has regenerative abilities. Seeing this, Saria decides that there's no use even fighting, but that's when Gray explains what's going on. Apparently, the ogre general's roar boosts the strength and recovery power of his soldiers. This is why the minions appear strangely more powerful than normal. Saria struggles to hold off the big guy, while our boy is baffled that he's not been able to defeat a single one of the ogres in this second wave. He lands hit after hit, but they just recover immediately. All of a sudden, he decides to leave his back to Saria, asking her to just buy him some time. Of course, that's not going to be easy at all since she's been struggling with only one ogre. She's really concerned when he says this, so she asks him what he's planning to do, and that's when he tells her that they have only one option left if they want to come out of this alive. And with that being said, Gray reveals his suicidal plan to go after the ogre general. Our boy knows that the source of their power is the elite boss of the nest, so he decides to go after it. He slashes his way through the sea of ogres, but they just keep coming back to try to flank him, which just annoys him even more. He has his sights locked on the target, so for now, he just needs to focus on wiping out all the enemies in front of him to clear the path. Sadly, that's exactly when he comes face to face with an ogre that shatters his sword with a big axe. Gray is dazed when this happens and spends a moment staring at the short piece that's left of his blade. It's clear now that his sword can't withstand fighting a strengthened ogre, which is a really bad sign since he intends to face the ogre general soon. He quickly gets his head back in the game and dodges a mighty strike just in time. And while he's still in the air, he takes out his spare sword. He's lucky to have one, but he knows that it's just a matter of time before this one gets broken too. As if she was reading his mind, Saria suddenly tosses her spare sword to him so he can have two. He thanks her as he catches the second blade with ease, but even though he has two swords now, he knows that there's still not enough to wipe out all the enemies. However, it's all he's got, so he's determined to make it count, since all he has to do now is wipe out the ogres in his way and take out the general. With this renewed sense of hope, our boy runs through the wave of orges standing in his way like a bolt of lightning. He moves so fast that some of them don't even see him coming, but in the process, he takes a few hits and even gets slashed in the face. Still, this doesn't deter him as he pushes on relentlessly through the horde of bloodthirsty monsters. The general notices the hero getting close, so he lets out another powerful roar to strengthen his soldiers even more. This is a twist that our boy didn't see coming at all, because he didn't even think these ogres could get any stronger. Sadly, they're mutated in a flash and the fight becomes several times more difficult. He's no longer able to push through, and at this rate, it's only a matter of time before he and his swords are crushed. Gray realizes that the general saw right through his plan, which makes him admit that the boss is truly very intelligent. It's obvious now that the boss's high intellect isn't just for show. Our boy continues to struggle in the fight, and he almost gets squashed but quickly gets out of the way and regains his footing. He creates some distance between himself and the monsters and decides to change his approach. He doesn't have the time or the power to deal with these minions anymore, so he attempts to run past them without actually fighting them, but this plan is quickly thwarted when one of the ogres suddenly tackles him like an NFL linebacker. The hero suddenly finds himself immobilized as the monster refuses to let go, and as if that's not enough, an even bigger ogre comes around with a massive axe to split him in two. Thankfully, he's able to use his tackler as a shield to save himself from the first strike, but then, he's forced to defend himself against the sheer might of the subsequent blows. Gray uses his sword to block the attacks. Before he can even think of his next move, the beast follows up with another devastating blow that sends him flying. This time around, he takes a direct hit that leaves him coughing out blood, and by the time he looks at his hand, all he finds is another broken sword. Our boy is now down to his last sword, which is a very bad position for him. He's badly injured and exhausted, but still has to take on the horde along with the overpowered general pumping them with fresh energy every 5 minutes. Gray struggles to get back on his feet to face the ogres now charging at him, but the gears in his head are now turning even faster, because he needs to come up with a plan to save himself. From the experience he gathered as a foot soldier, he knows for sure that he can't win this fight, and since that's the case, he decides to sacrifice himself. He suddenly shouts for her to run away, while they're focused on him, but she just smiles when she hears. Without hesitation, she lets him know that she can't do that, and not just because that big-helmed powerhouse is still in her way. Hearing this, Gray tries to scold her, wondering if she's got a death wish or something. He's afraid that she wants to die for nothing just to look brave, so he assures her that he'll run right behind her once she starts moving. However, she's not even refusing because she's worried about him. Apparently, Saria literally can't even run anymore because there's a nasty cut on her thigh, making it difficult for her to even stay on her feet. Gray gets to see the wound and is instantly horrified because his master is basically a sitting duck in that state. Just like that, saving her by sacrificing himself becomes impossible, and he immediately runs out of options. Gray's life begins to flash before his eyes just like they did in his previous life. He was sent back in time so that he could defeat the Liquidator, so it's pretty sad for him to realize that his new life is going to end just 8 months later in a filthy ogre's nest. His chances of survival drop even further when his last sword gets broken by another powerful strike. It's looking pretty bad for our hero at this point, but even with the odds stacked against him, he refuses to accept defeat. Gray Lee believes that it's not over yet because he still has one last trump card up his sleeve. Sure, he doesn't know how to use the dark power he possesses, but our boy is certain that even all these enemies before him will be no match for him if he can just tap into the power from the battle against the Liquidator. So now, with that being his last and only hope to survive, Gray forces himself to remember how he felt when he first unleashed that power. He doesn't have much time to do this though, since the red-eyed ogres are charging at him. Our hero closes his eyes to focus so he can remember the sensation from that time, and while doing this, he points his broken sword at the enemies, hopeful that the dark power would transform it into a deadly weapon in no time. Sure enough, our boy manages to activate the power in the nick of time. Just when he's about to be smashed by the monsters, his broken sword comes to life with the dark power, allowing him to destroy the ogres before him permanently. Saria is very shocked when she sees this, and she's already pretty worried, but before she can freak out, Gray turns to her with half of his face consumed by the dark energy. And then, he smiles at her, assuring her that everything is alright. Our boy's not kidding, and we're able to see why he just said that. Gray is now a lot more powerful than he was a few moments ago, which is why he's able to casually wipe out the horde of the ogres in front of him. Apparently, these strikes are so potent that the ogres are unable to recover from them, and even though the general starts to take some damage as well. She notices this and it's shocking to her, so she gets distracted for a second. In that split second, her opponent gets the chance to sneak up on her, but she sees it coming and manages to block it. Saria uses her sword to block the huge axe, and that's when she notices that the force behind it is now lighter than it was before. All of a sudden, the mightiest ogre suddenly becomes a walkover for Saria, so she takes advantage of it and destroys the brute in a flash. He sure gave her a hard time earlier, but without the general strengthening him, he's nothing. A while later, we see the hero and his master standing victorious in the nest surrounded by ogre corpses. He's amazed that they somehow managed to come out of it alive, and the bruises on his face confirm that it was no easy feat. He apologizes for breaking her sword, but the sword master assures him that she doesn't mind since he literally saved her life. Either way, he gives her back the broken sword and she takes it from him, even though that's not her major concern at the moment. While taking it off his hands, she tries to ask him about the attack he used to win the fight, but before she can finish talking, our boy collapses to the floor headfirst. The hero passes out in an instant, which leaves her absolutely horrified, so she starts. While she's trying to wake him up, we see that our boy's consciousness is actually elsewhere. He finds himself standing in a dark, empty place filled with shallow water. In the middle of the place, there's a huge door with chains on it, which he finds very strange. And while he's still trying to wrap his head around what the hell is going on, weird gusts of energy start to flow out of the door along with mysterious symbols. At first, he doesn't understand what's going on, but he quickly realizes that it's the same power that kicked in on the battlefield. A line appears in the middle of the door like a smaller gateway, allowing the dark clouds to seep out. This makes Gray wonder if opening the door will allow him to get that power. Of course, there's only one way to find out, so makes up his mind and starts marching toward the door. He gets closer, and after only a few steps, he feels an overwhelming and ominous force pull him back. The massive red skeleton spirit drags Gray away from the door with a crushing power that horrifies him. After that suffocating experience, our boy realizes that he's definitely going to die if he opens that door in his current state. Chills run down his spine as he says this, and almost immediately, a loud voice responds to him, informing that he made a wise call. As you can imagine, Gray is taken aback when he hears the voice, but he doesn't even get a chance to figure out anything else, because the next moment, he's waking up in a bed struggling to catch his breath. He wakes up like someone who just had a nightmare, so Saria is really concerned about him. Thankfully, Saria is in the room, so she comes to check on him, seeing that he's finally awake. She clearly has not fully recovered from the damage they suffered in the ogre's nest. At the same time, our boy is pretty confused, so he asks where he is, and that's when she informs him that he's been unconscious for 5 days. As such, she was even afraid that he wasn't going to wake up anymore. Our boy is still pretty surprised that he's been asleep for the last 5 days, so he figures that it's due to the fact that he must have pushed himself pretty hard. It clearly took a toll on his body, and the swordmaster agrees with him, even though she feels that he did a lot more than pushing himself pretty hard. Anyway, she's concerned about his condition, wondering what the state of his body is. She asks him if he can move, and since he also does know the answer, he decides to give it a try. Sadly, Gray suddenly realizes that he can't move his right arm at all. He can't muster any strength in it, and even though he knows he can move a bit, he's afraid that he might not be able to hold a sword with it. As if that's not bad enough, he also notices a weird bruise on his bandaged arm with dark energy spreading. Saria notices that he's struggling with it, so she asks him about it. Hearing this, Gray is a little surprised because it means that she can't see the dark tattoo-like bruise on his arm. Since that's the case, he simply admits that he can't put any strength into his dominant arm. Apparently, the swordmaster isn't actually surprised to hear this. It's just as she thought, and so she also knows that it won't heal back to normal anytime soon. After all the bones in his right arm are in pieces. Clearly, the hero didn't know about this, especially since it doesn't even seem hurt at all from the outside. He explains this, and that's when she tells him that they've already treated it with a magic potion. For some reason, our boy doesn't like the sound of that at all. He stares at the empty potion bottle in shock and panic, because the last time he checked, such things were extremely expensive. However, his master assures him that he shouldn't worry about it, because the village chief was the one who gave it to them. He's shocked to hear this too, because he can't even wrap his head around why the chief would give a potion to someone like him. The moment he says this, she sounds baffled that he'd talk like that, and that's when she informs him that he's literally the hero of the village. Of course, this doesn't even make any sense to him, so he just stares at her in bemusement. He's still processing what she just said when someone bursts into the room, asking for him. He recognizes the loud voice, so he immediately jolts up from the bed to greet the village chief. He nervously tries to start thanking the man for the magic potion, but the chief cuts him off, stating that they're the ones who should be thanking him. He helped them kill a freaking ogre general, the same monster that couldn't be scratched even after rally the forces from the surrounding town gathered to fight it. The chief is certain that the entire village would have been destroyed if Gray hadn't killed the monster, and he's not wrong. So once again, he thanks our boy for his help and places the potion bottle back in his hands. After all, if it wasn't for him and Saria, nothing would be here right now, not the village, not the people, and not even the potion itself. The hero tries to be all modest about it, suggesting that the chief is exaggerating, but the man claims that he all knows he's just stating things as they are. Upon hearing these words and after seeing the look in the man's eyes, Gray realizes that the chief is probably right. In the world before he was sent back in time, this village was supposed to have been destroyed by the ogre's attack. So, indeed, if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't be standing here right now. Seeing how puzzled Gray looks, the chief offers to explain in great detail to him what he's done if he still doesn't realize its significance. Moving on from that, he asks our boy if he's really going to take the entrance exam at the World Union Academy. It turns out that our boy had forgotten all about the one thing that made him train hard for the past 8 months. So, when the chief brings it up, it's like a dagger to the heart because he realizes how much he's messed things up. He went after the ogres just over a week to the entrance exam, and he's been asleep for the past 5 days in this infirmary, which means that he only has 2 days left till the main exam. Getting to the World Union Academy alone takes 3 days on foot, so walking there is no longer even an option. He could get there in a day on horse, but he doesn't have that kind of money, and so he summons the courage to ask the chief to lend him a horse for his trip. Surprisingly, the man already knew he'd make this request, which is why he had already prepared the best horse in the whole village for Gray in advance. The chief believes that our boy should be able to get to the academy in no time with the legs on that horse. While the man is busy bragging about his pet, Saria tells the hero that they would have carried him to the exam in his sleep, even if he hadn't woken up today. After a while, our boy gathers enough strength to stand, so he walks to the door, and as soon as he goes outside, he's greeted with a huge crowd of villagers thanking him and wishing him success in his exams. They're all grateful to him for saving the village, and while most of them are holding up posters, one guy walks up to him with a sack as a gift. Gray asks what it is, and the man claims that it's something the whole village chipped in for him. Apparently, they heard that it costs a lot to apply to the World Union Academy, so they came together to raise the funds for him. Our boy is shocked that everyone contributed to the cause, but the feeling is quickly replaced with joy and gratitude as he thanks them for their kindness. Soon it's time for him to get going, so he says his goodbyes. Saria is with him as he prepares to set off, and he admits that it's going to be really hard to come back here if he fails the exam after everything the village has done for him, but his master assures him that there's no need to worry about that. As far as she's concerned, not a single one of the other applicants in the World Union Academy could beat an ogre general. Sure, Gray knows she's probably right about that, but he still has concerns about his banged-up right arm. Hearing this, Saria simply asks if his left arm is good, which he confirms. Of course, it's not his dominant arm, so he's not sure about using it, but she insists that it's good enough to good him in. She also doesn't think he needs to use that dangerous power inside him, but he feels that the entrance exam might be tougher than they think. Thinking he can pass with just one arm seems a bit like a stretch to him, but Saria assures him that it's going to be fine, because she trusts that the Academy's examiners won't be so blind as to overlook his ability. If there's one thing she can guarantee him, it's that he'll definitely pass the exam. At this point, our boy has already mounted his horse, ready to set off, so he thanks her once again for the pep talk, feeling a lot more confident. Just like that, our hero sets off on his journey to begin the next chapter of his new life. In the previous world, this village was destroyed, but he knows that the enemy of mankind still exists here. However, he also knows that this world is no longer the same as the old one, because the future can be changed with this power that he now possesses. Soon, our boy arrives at the capital, and the first thing he does is thank the beautiful horse that got him there. He's only been in the city for a short while, but he can already spot the amazing structure that is the World Union Academy. Despite how expensive it is to apply here, the place is absolutely swarming with potential applications. There's a sea of people gathered in the World Union Academy, and every single one of them dreams to become a hero. Over the speaker, they're informed that the distribution of exam tickets will begin shortly. Until the process is completed, all applicants are instructed to remain inside the central arena. Among the crowd, some people start chatting about how competitive this academy is. Apparently, out of the thousands gathered in this arena, only 20 of them will be accepted into the World Union Academy. That's the rumor going around, and our boy quietly listens to the guys spreading them, but some people heard that the number of admitted students changed yearly. Some years, they accept up to 50 candidates, and other years, only one person makes it. Just then, Professor Ariel is called upon to address the applicants, so the red-haired lady with a monocle appears on the platform. She gets straight to distributing the exam tickets to everyone in the arena, but she does it in a flash with the snap of her fingers. Just like that, the papers appear right in front of all the applicants. Like everyone else there, our boy is pretty impressed when the ticket appears right in front of him from a flash of flames. He grabs the paper and reads the content to discover that his candidate number 513, and he also learns that he'll be taking the fencing course. Everyone has their own ticket, and our boy will have to take the exam that requires most people to have the bones in their dominant arm to not be shattered. Professor Aries knows that some of them might be surprised by the format for the exam, but she assures them that this is how it is every year. She goes on to explain that the World Union Academy does not discriminate based on age, gender, nationality, status, or anything else. Not even their names are of any significance here. The professor makes this clear to the applicants, stating that only those who pass the exam and earn the right to cross the bridge will be asked for their names. Meanwhile, our boy is still baffled by the fact that he's taking the fencing course when he literally left his sword at the inn. He doesn't get what kind of system this is, so he's pretty hung up on it. While he's busy racking his brain, the professor reveals that she assigned their courses according to how they look. And so, she asks those who feel he was wrong about it to raise their hands. Many of the students find it hard to believe that she picked their courses just by looking at them, because there are literally thousands of them. Judging by their reactions, along with the lack of raised hands, it's pretty clear that the lady got their courses right. Still, many of them believe that there's foul play. To them, the academy either checked them beforehand or she used magic to read their minds. After confirming that she didn't miss anybody's course, Professor Ariel states that she'll be announcing their exam schedules next. As such, he asks them to check their tickets for the next update. Of course, all the applicants check their tickets, including Gray Lee, who finds out that his exam will be on the first day at 11 a.m. As you can imagine, he's not really excited to see that he's up on the first day, because he was hoping for a little more time to let his arm heal. Sadly, that's not the case. The professor goes on to pile on the pressure, announcing that this is a one-shot practical exam. Latecomers will be automatically disqualified, so she makes this known to them and advises them to be on time. She also lets them know that the academy does not accommodate personal requests for schedule changes. While the announcements are going on, Gray quietly tries to see if his arm is better now, but sadly, he still can't get any strength to it. So now, all he can do is pray that it heals by morning, even if it's only a little, because otherwise he'll have no choice but to fight with his left arm. Unfortunately, the next day, our hero wakes up and is immediately frustrated because his injured arm didn't even heal at all. Now, he has no choice but to take the exam like that because there's no option for schedule changes. Gray gets ready and heads to the exam, and when it's almost his turn, he is directed to the entrance of the arena. While waiting for his turn, he tries to calm down, reminding himself that he shouldn't be pessimistic about this right now. As he tries to maintain positive thoughts, he realizes that his left arm is still fully functional, and he can even move his right to an extent. With this in mind, he comes up with an idea. Gray concludes that he needs to use the little time he has left to watch the examiner's moves and prepare for them. Our boy believes that what he needs to do now is study his opponent and find an opening to strike. At this point, we get to see the current application in the arena. The examiner tells him to take the first move, so the brute with the big sword charges at him like a bull. He moves pretty fast and successfully takes a swing, but he misses and strikes the floor instead, just missing the examiner by centimeters. He's puzzled when he sees the chill examiner nonchalantly standing with his hands behind his back after evading the attack. The experienced teacher casually avoided the hit, which pisses the applicant, so he angrily goes in for another attack. This time, with an even more devastating swing to the side, but once again, the examiner makes his attack fruitless. He blocks the second strike with his sword, leaving the hothead in disbelief. And once the guy is stunned, he follows up with his own counterattack to quite literally sweep the guy off his feet. The examiner sends the guy crashing like a tumbleweed, and by the time he stops rolling, he's sitting on his butt without his sword and a broken arm. Seeing this, the veteran concludes his exam and asks him to exit the venue with his weapon. Of course, Our boy witnessed everything that just happened, so a smile of acceptance creeps up on his face, because now, he knows without a shadow of a doubt that he's cooked. The examiner calls his number and he just starts walking into the arena. In his mind, all he can do now is go on stage and quietly take his L before going back home, because if that tough guy couldn't even land a hit with perfectly good arms, then what are his odds? Just like he did with the last guy, he tells Gray to make the first move. Sadly, our boy is even struggling to hold the sword properly right now. He can feel the pressure even more now, so he doesn't even think he stands a chance. Nevertheless, he's not a quitter, so he reminds himself that he still has to do whatever he can. With this in mind, he charges at the veteran with his blade, and during that run-up, one of Sarya's teachings runs across his mind. He remembers her telling him that a sword isn't swung with just one's arms. She taught him to channel the power generated by his entire body through his arms instead, and now that remembers, he decides to do just that. Even if his right arm is powerless, he knows that he can still drive the force through his other muscles. So, he gives it a try and takes a very decent swing. The examiner dodges the strike, of course, and Gray isn't shocked, since it's not like he can fight the way he usually does. If swinging a sword without arm strength was not easy, no one would bother training their body in the first place, so he sucks it up and shoves the excuses far down below so that he can focus better. Despite being pretty much handicapped, Gray manages to force the instructor to attack him very quickly, but that is when he notices something strange. All of a sudden, the examiner's sword strike starts to look a lot slower than before. It's just like what happened with Belder, but the difference here is the insane force that comes from those apparently slow attacks. However, Gray can still tell that this man's speed and technique doesn't even come close to his master's. With this in mind, he feels that he might be able to make up for the difference in arm strength if he can just stick to the swordsmanship that he learned from her. So, that being the case, our boy goes into beast mode in the blink of an eye. He unleashes a barrage of sword slashes on the examiner, forcing the guy back faster than he would have imagined. He makes the instructor fall back a lot while trying to block the hits to the point that the man almost loses his footing. On top of that, the guy still looks very slow in Gray's eyes, so now he's starting to think that this examiner is not even nearly as strong as he thought before. In that moment, Sarya's words play back in his mind as he remembers her assuring him that he would pass. So now, with the way he's dominating the examiner, he's feeling a lot more confident that he can actually do this. Our boy Gray starts to really get the upper hand in the duel, feeling a lot more confident than he was before he stepped into the arena. However, the examiner doesn't intend to lose that easily to an applicant, so he takes things up a notch and begins to attack more forcefully. The instructor unleashes a myriad of slashes, but our boy is able to block them all. Now, it's becoming clear that the difference in power is too great, even though he's already seen through his opponent's swordsmanship. The examiner is stronger than him, and so, Gray is unable to break his form. After blocking most of the attacks, he gets an opening to strike, so he thrusts his sword forcefully, but the instructor deflects it swiftly. At this point, our boy notices that the man's movements are becoming rougher, so he comes up with a plan that could win him the fight. It's a bit risky, but he feels that trying it at the perfect time might just be the move that helps him defeat his opponent. With this in mind, the hero makes up his mind to do it. He lures the instructor to throw powerful moves at him by being more defensive, and this causes the man to leave himself vulnerable for a counterattack. As soon as Gray sees this opening, a grin appears on his face because his plan worked. After all, in a fight like this, there's nothing more likely to expose an opening than a big predictable swing. With blistering speed, the hero goes in for the finishing blow, which makes the instructor lose his balance. The examiner struggles back in shock when Gray capitalizes on his mistake, and before he can recover from it, our boy launches another strike, determined to seal the deal. Now, the odds are in his favor despite being weaker and having less experience. No matter how great the difference in power is, he's convinced that he'll win if he can just get behind his opponent. Gray takes the bold swing to secure the win, but then a loud commanding voice orders him to stop. So, he halts his strike midway despite being pretty baffled. He looks up at the official, wondering if the match is over already because it seems a bit too early to stop now. Well, it turns out that the limit for the exam has been reached, and with the duel that was on display, the result will be a draw. Hearing this, our boy just stares at the official in shock. He was so close to winning, but he couldn't do it in time, so he sighs in defeat, feeling bad that he didn't make it. It's a crushing outcome for our boy who's trained so much to get to this point. But he knows that he can't protest or argue, because that would be pointless. So, he quietly makes his way out of the arena, believing that he's actually done his best. Of course, it's not so easy to accept a loss like this, especially when it determines his future. The fact that he couldn't even win the first examiner makes him feel that things will be pretty difficult for him. At the moment, his fate looks pretty bleak because his chances of getting into the academy this year are now 0 since he failed to beat his examiner. So, he decides to come back the following year to take the exam again since his arm would have healed by then. With this in mind, he simply thanks the examiners and the academy for even giving him the chance to apply. Fast forward to 1 week later, and it's time for the final round table meeting to decide the students that will be getting accepted into the finest institution in the world. The meeting is held in room 53, and once they're all seated, the chairman asks what they think of the candidates now that they've all completed the exam. The first examiner immediately admits that he's overwhelmed by how tough it is to pick out only a few students, while another one states that the current method of everyone observing together is rather inefficient. As such, he suggests that they divide the workload the following year. It sounds like a good idea at first, but then, another professor doesn't agree with him. The man insists that they can't afford to overlook a talent simply for the sake of making things easier for themselves. At this point, the oldest man in the meeting reminds them that he asked to hear their thoughts on the students and not their opinions on the examination system. That being said, he decides that they start with the swordsmanship course and asks his professors to let him know which of the candidates passed in this category. Well, according to their rules, those who beat the examiners passed automatically, and those who couldn't achieve that will be assessed based on the quality they showed and how they held out during the 15-minute time limit. One of the examiners explains this and then asks the swordsmanship course instructors what they think about it. All the matches were recorded so they're able to rewatch and analyze the performance of the candidates. Other than those who beat the examiner, candidates number 5, 217 and 753 stood out. The man suggests that they kept it at that because even if the others joined, they wouldn't be able to keep up in class. The second professor agrees with this decision and then asks if anyone has a contrary opinion. None of the examiners speaks up to say anything otherwise, so the chairman figures that they have confirmed the successful candidates for the swordsmanship course. But just when they're about to make the final verdict, one of the examiners asks what the room thinks about candidate number 513. It's none other than Professor Ariel, and judging by the look on her face, she is pretty interested in that candidate. The other examiners in the room seem pretty intrigued when she brings up Gray Lee. So, they dig out the recording of his match against his examiner, and they're amazed when they realize how good he is. It certainly looks like he was going to win the fight, which is a good thing, but they also feel that things are going to be difficult for him if he has to rely on setting up traps just to beat an examiner. They notice that his technique was good, but his strength was also clearly lacking, which doesn't help his case at all. The second guy isn't too impressed about that, and even claims that Gray was outmatched from the start until the end of the fight. After a couple of them give their opinions, the chairman asks for a conclusion, so they decide that Gray Lee is no good and shouldn't be accepted into the academy. The red-haired lady just scoffs up on hearing their conclusion because she can't believe that not a single one of them noticed what she saw even after watching the footage again. Apparently, everyone has decided to be this blind. Professor Ariel concludes that having everyone observe together is really a waste. The next day, all the aspirants return to the academy for the results, and our boy is one of them. He holds his ticket in hand, waiting for the examiners to announce the successful candidates for the swordsmanship course. At the moment, 6 candidates have passed, and as soon as this is announced, Gray becomes even more anxious. Candidate number 5 is called upon and his ticket goes up in flames immediately. Next, candidate number 217 is called, the number 432 and 615 along with numbers 753 and 925. As soon as their numbers are called, their tickets go up in flames as well, leaving all the others pretty amazed. Sadly, only those whose numbers were called will be attending the World Union Academy for the swordsmanship course, and when our boy hears this announcement, his heart sinks to his belly in a flash. He probably saw it coming after the way his exam went, but he's still dazed when it is actually confirmed that he wasn't selected. The successful candidates are asked to cross the bridge and complete their enrollment procedure by the end of the day. Of course, those who passed the exam are really stoked about it, and their buddies are equally happy for them. On the other hand, there are many other candidates who are still brooding over their situation. While others are celebrating, Gray just stares at his ticket in disappointment, feeling that he failed after all. It's a horrible feeling for sure, especially after everything he went through to get to this place, but even though it looks like he'll be going home, there is one last category, known as the Divine Eye Special Admission. As you can imagine, our boy isn't really interested when he hears the announcement. He probably doesn't even know what that is, but then all of a sudden, he hears this number being called. Of course, this is a big shock, but what's even more surprising is the way his ticket suddenly starts glowing with a bright blue light. It shines even brighter than those who had the flames earlier, so he's just as confused as all the other candidates, staring at him in awe. They're all baffled by the display on show, and after staring at the glowing card for a few seconds, the hero finally starts to realize that he actually passed. While most applicants are perplexed like our boy, some others in the crowd are pretty familiar with this Divine Eye special admission thing because the Academy has actually done it before. At the moment, the name still doesn't ring any bells in Gray's head because he's never heard of it before. He doesn't get it, and while he's still pondering on it, those who know what it is make him understand that it's basically a way that someone gets into the institution through the back door. Some cocky know-it-alls who probably got in normally also have something to say about it. To them, the World Union Academy has really fallen to have allowed a special admission, but while the jerks are busy going on about it, our boy is simply hung up on the fact that he got in through the back door. It doesn't make any sense since he doesn't have any connections here, so he wonders if his master was the one who found a way to get him in. It's a possibility, but he knows it's a stretch because she never even mentioned anything of that sort. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when an old man comes around to scold the candidates who were speaking ill of the Divine Eye special admission. And seeing that they've decided to be ignorant, he decides to enlighten them. He explains that the Divine Eye special admissions is an honorable category that has produced heroes for over 100 years. The old man tries to make them understand, but the jerks refuse to accept it. As far as they're concerned, the geezers at the World Union Academy are just the ones who love the Divine Eye special admission. Besides, the last time they checked, those who got in through this path were only impressive back in the day. Apparently, recent successful Divine Eye candidates include Amy White, Bella Albright, Leek Mueller, and Jacob Bloomfield, who are considered complete failures at the World Union Academy. Some of these names probably ring a bell to you, because these are the names of the heroes we saw in the first chapter. For some reason, these same guys are the bottom feeders at the World Union Academy, and they're so notorious for their poor performance that even the current candidates know about them. On the other hand, Gray remembers Amy, Bella, and Jacob very vividly from his past life, because the three of them were part of the main force that fought against the Liquidator. Despite what everyone is saying right now, our boy is so excited that he'll get to fight alongside them because he knows that they will become the true heroes. The story continues on the day of the entrance ceremony. Currently, the ceremony is scheduled to begin 30 minutes from now, so the students urges them to assemble in the plaza in front of the main office if they're done changing. For the first time, we get to see our boy in his stunning uniform with the World Union Academy emblem engraved into his chest pocket. After walking for a while, the guys at the front start to argue about the correct location. Apparently, they should be at the plaza in front of the main office, but there's nothing here, so they're not sure that they even came to the right place. Before they can get even more confused, one of the professors comes around to meet them. He apologizes for the confusion, explaining that they've had a bit of a delay setting up due to a mix-up. Hearing this, the students are still quite confused because they don't get what he means by setting up. Just then, the man tells them to step back a bit so that he can put the stairs in that spot. This just baffles them even more, but they step back and ask if that's good enough. Thankfully, it's just perfect, so the white-haired professor begins to do his thing. The students watch in confusion as the man goes down to start writing something on the floor. They're still pondering on what he could be doing when a giant massive circle appears on the ground. The golden seal spreads out, glowing brightly, leaving the students in awe, and then in the blink of an eye, a gigantic auditorium appears with a flight of stairs attached to it. Once again, the man apologizes for the delay and then tells them to sit wherever they like in the huge hall. Of course, they're still pretty dazed by what just happened because they can't even comprehend how he managed to teleport something this massive. While most of the other freshmen remain pretty stoked about what the professor did, our boy quietly takes a seat. He feels that they probably did this because they want to hold the entrance ceremony in a place where they can see the school building. It's a pretty brilliant idea, and he also believes that it's a pretty extravagant way to use teleportation magic. He's heard a lot about the institution in his past life and the present one, but now, he can boldly say that he has seen the power of the World Union Academy. The hall is massive, so it's pretty obvious that the number of seats is pretty excessive. One purple-haired guy at the front points this out because he doesn't think there's need for this many seats, when only 30 students were accepted this year. However, the girl sitting next to him informs him that he doesn't even know what he's talking about. In response, he simply apologizes, claiming that he never really studied anything other than how to wield the sword. In that case, the girl decides to enlighten him a bit. The World Union Academy, as the name suggests, gathers the best students from all over the world. She first makes him understand this, and before she's even done talking, she points up at the sky in excitement, announcing that the others have arrived. That's when everyone else looks up at the sky to see the fleet of airships along with huge dragons. Most of the students are terrified when they see this because they have no idea what the hell is going on. But our boy seems to know exactly what's happening. Looking up at the sky, he immediately identifies the magic airship, Strato Queen. He had boarded it once when he was part of the Liquidator subjugation squad. They say it's one of the largest airships in the world, so he's surprised that they're bringing it out just for an entrance ceremony. Well, apparently, that's just the kind of thing the World Union Academy does. Just then, the white-haired professor from earlier notices that everyone has arrived, so he decides that it's time to officially begin the entrance ceremony. A while later, just after the headmaster's speech, we catch up with our boy who currently looks bored to death. He's so close to falling asleep, and after the last couple minutes, he confirms that even the World Union Academy's entrance ceremony isn't much different from a normal one. Well, he is bored now, but that's about to change very quickly because the next item on the agenda is the greetings from the top students of each course. Gray's eyes almost pop out of his head when he sees Leonhardt, the top student of the swordsmanship course, coming forward to answer the call. At this point, our boy is a lot more interested in the entrance ceremony, and he's not the only one because all the other freshmen are staring at Leonhardt. It makes a lot of sense that they dread him this much since he was the one who defeated the examiner in an instant during the entrance exam. The guy climbs the platform and greets the professors there very politely. Apparently, this guy is so good that some say he's as good as the teacher when it comes to swordsmanship. It's a pretty bold statement, but I guess that's just how good this white-haired talent named Leonhard Appius is. At this point, the hero is really intrigued, but his thoughts are interrupted when Leonhardt suddenly asks the professors if he is allowed to speak freely. They confirm that he is free to talk, so he thanks them and prepares to give his own little speech. He starts by stating that he has just one complaint he'd like to make to the academy. But before revealing what it is, he turns to address his fellow students. Well, that's what he says at first, but then he throws a jab at our boy, claiming that he's only talking to the students who were admitted the proper way. Leonhardt tells them what an honor it is to be admitted to the academy with them, hopeful that they'll all graduate as individuals capable of making meaningful contributions to the world. That being said, he urges his classmates to work hard together, claiming that he looks forward to the days when they can aim high together as students of the prestigious World Union Academy. After giving this little speech, he returns to subtly attacking our hero by suggesting that there's someone among them who doesn't deserve to be there. He makes this bold statement and then turns to the divine eye Professor Ariel, asking her to confirm if he's correct or not. The red-haired professor's expression instantly changes from a look of pride to shock. She's utterly taken aback by the allegations, so she tries to correct him, insisting that all the students here have passed the rigorous exam. Even though they may not be as strong as he is, she makes it clear to him that it's not a wise idea to exclude the other students. After clearing this air on that, she bluntly asks him why the hell he's even asking her something like that. At this point, the persistent top student hits back at her, stating that he wasn't talking about those who have been admitted by passing their exams properly. And then, he looks Professor Ariel dead in the eye and tells her that he's talking about the student she let in through the back door with her divine eye special admission. The red-haired lady just smiles when he calls her out like this, but he doesn't even stop there, because the next thing he does is to loudly demand that the one who was specially admitted reveal himself. This dude even has the balls to demand that Gray return his uniform and leave the academy right away. Everyone seated in the hall is taken aback by his audacity. They gasp in shock, but none of them dares to challenge Leonhardt. At the same time, nobody steps up to support him. Meanwhile, the target in question is still on his seat. He hasn't revealed himself yet because he's trying to understand what the reason for this hostility is. He's pretty nervous, but he's relieved that Leonhardt doesn't even know his face, because that would be a serious problem for him. He remembers when the top student stood up to answer the call, and he's glad that the guy didn't notice him back then despite how close they were to each other. Since Leonhardt clearly doesn't know who he is, he figures that it's wiser to just remain seated because he might not get caught up in this whole thing if he doesn't actually step forward. When the special admissions student refuses to come forward, Professor Ariel finally chimes in with an unbothered look on her face. She suggests that this year's students are quite lively after seeing how bold the guy standing before her is. She makes this statement, hoping to lighten the mood, but the persistent top student just snaps at her. He makes her understand that he's very serious about what he just said, and then demands that she stop admitting students through the back door. He's about to say some more disrespectful stuff when Professor Ariel finally gets fed up. She cuts him off by appearing behind him and then prepares to show him exactly why she's a professor at the academy. Ariel asks Leonhardt if he thinks that he's stronger than the student she chose through the Divine Eye special admissions. The question catches him off guard at first because he's not completely sure. But he's already made a lot of noise and backing off now would just make him look stupid, so he musters the courage to state that he is. He's furious that she'd even ask him a question like that and wonders if she thinks that he's not as strong as the mystery student. With this response, Professor Ariel smiles even more because she knows what things are about to get interesting. She likes his attitude and proposes that they make a bet so he can put his money where his mouth is. Once again, Leonhardt is taken aback by the idea she just brought up, but she reiterates and confirms that she actually wants to make a bet, and not just any regular net, because she's actually willing to gamble with her job to prove that she didn't make a mistake. Of course, this bet means that Gray Lee's special admission will also be at stake, so our boy becomes pretty worried because this definitely wasn't part of his plans. Gray begins to panic because he doesn't even know what kind of bet this daring lady is talking about right now. Off the top of his head, Leonhardt figures that the professor probably wants to make him fight the special admissions student, but she claims that she would never do such a boorish thing. After all, she believes that Leonhardt would end up dead if our boy goes all out against him. She literally tells him that he's no match for the special admissions student, and then assures him that she wouldn't intentionally make them fight because as an educator, she must not put the lives of her students at risk. Of course, the only person she's worried about is Leonhardt, so she makes this clear to him, which of course causes him to become absolutely livid. The veins in his head start bulging out as his blood begins to boil, and then he asks the lady if she's actually trying to provoke him. In response, Professor Ariel bluntly tells him that she meant every word of what she just said. As such, she suggests that they make their bet about monsters since it would be safer that way. Rather than making them fight and risk hurting each other, it's safer to see which of them is better at killing monsters. Professor Ariel makes the proposal and still manages to piss the top student off by teasing him about how he's better at fighting monsters than humans. Despite being really mad, he admits that she is truly well informed and then asks her what their bet will be exactly. Now that they're on the same page, Professor Ariel reveals that the conditions for the bet are very simple. All they have to do is kill the monsters that she picks as targets. Each round, the target monster will get stronger, and whoever fails to defeat their monster first loses the bet. That being said, the red-haired lady reveals that she will retire from her position as a professor if her candidate loses the bet. And of course, this also means that the special students will be expelled. Of course, our boy feels very uncomfortable listening to the lady gamble with his future, but then again, she's the one who got him into the academy in the first place. As for Leonhardt, she informs him that he'll have to do whatever she says if he loses the bet instead. The blondie is a little reluctant to accept these terms, because it could very well be a trap, so when the professor asks if they've got a deal, he asks her to tell him what the target monsters will be first. The guy assures her that he's confident he can handle any opponent, but also he's smart enough to try not to be caught up in some weird setup. The professor can't argue with that, so on the spot, she suggests that the first target would be an ogre general. She casually proposes it and then asks Leonhardt if that will be too easy for him, even though she knows that it won't be. Meanwhile, all the students around gasp in shock when they hear this because they also know how dangerous an ogre general is. At the same time, our boy starts to get a little suspicious because he doesn't get why she specifically chose that monster as the first target out of all the creatures she could have thought of. Apparently, the cocky top student also knows how formidable an ogre general is, so he immediately protests, feeling that it's unfair of her to choose it. After all, they only consider creatures that one can kill by themselves monsters, and as far as he knows, an ogre general can't be killed by one person. At this point, the professor assures him that she's not asking him to go kill the beast right away. She doesn't expect him to be strong enough for that, so she sets a time frame to be the entire year. In other words, she's giving him till the end of the year to kill a general ogre. However, Leonhardt insists that it's not a fair challenge. As far as he's concerned, if someone could single-handedly take down a disaster-level monster within just a year of training, then no one would even be suffering. That being said, he demands that she choose a more realistic target, but then all of a sudden, an idea hits him. Leonhardt suddenly accuses the professor of deliberately picking a monster that no one can defeat so that she can end the bet with no clear winner. And so, he makes it clear to her that he will not agree to that. Hearing this, the lady just scoffs, feeling sorry for him. And that's when she adds one final condition, stating that Leonhardt will be declared the winner of the bet if it ends as a draw for any reason. The top student is stunned when she says this because he sure as hell didn't expect that twist. With the terms on the table now, if our boy fails to defeat the ogre general, Professor Ariel will automatically be fired and all special admission students will be expelled. Now, she's confident that there's no way Leonhardt will refuse her offer. The blondie stares at her with a confused look laced all over his face. He calls her crazy for even proposing something that could very much end badly for her. To him, It's like the outcome of this bet has already been decided, so the red-haired lady takes it that he no longer has any objections. Well, before going ahead with the bet, he wants to confirm that the ogre general will not be weakened in any way, and she assures him that the monster will be at full capacity. Once that's out of the way, he conjures up a contract for Leonhard to sign if he doesn't have any problems with the details of the bet. The top student scans the page quickly and signs the paper to accept the deal. And then, the professor casually walks away like she's already won, so he asks her if she really thinks that her candidate can win. Well, I guess they'll all find out soon enough. As you can imagine, the rest of the professors are stunned by what they just witnessed. Some wonder what's gotten into Ariel, while others feel that she wants to use the bet as an excuse to retire. They think that this is most likely the case since everyone knows that she's well past her prime now. Meanwhile, our boy can't help but feel anxious now that the bet is official. He suddenly remembers when she set the time frame for the bet to be till the end of the year, which makes him realize that the whole contract was a done deal from the start. Apparently, the clever old lady had Leonhard wrapped round her finger from the beginning. There was no way she was going to let him refuse. A while later, we see that our boy is about to take his first class on the basics of magic. The professor taking the class knows that some of them might be surprised to be receiving lectures on the first day, so he makes them understand that not a single day can be wasted as students of the academy. That being said, the professor begins the class by starting with the most basic of basics, which is how to utilize magic. He makes them understand that an invisible energy called ether lies within their bodies, which they can manipulate through the magic circuits in their bodies. Hearing this, Gray is relieved to know that he'll be able to keep up with the magic classes for now. Thanks to his time at the boot camp, he's already familiar with the basic concepts. Sadly, his peace of mind quickly vanishes when he realizes that he somehow ended up in the same class as Leonhard. Now, all he can do is pray that the guy doesn't find out that he's a Divine Eyes special admission student. As the class goes on, our boy quickly gets distracted and the professor catches him instantly. He scolds Gray for being absent, minded only 5 minutes into the class, and this is pretty much where things are about to get tougher for our boy. Gray is shocked that the man could notice him being distracted with a single glance because he's seated so far back. Either way, he apologizes, hoping to move past this quickly and not draw any more attention to himself, but the professor has other plans for him. The man is so pissed that he calls Gray to come down and demonstrate the basics of magic to the class since he's so confident. Desperate to get out of this, he reminds the man that they're in the swordsmanship course and don't really need to be able to use magic. Regardless, the man insists that those with the sword still need to know the basics of magic to coordinate with a mage. The way the man is talking right now reminds him of his time at the boot camp, so he suddenly starts to wonder if they're going to practice the same spell as back then. So, he asks the man if the spell he has in mind is the ether bullet, and this intrigues the professor because he didn't think the freshman would know about that. Thankfully, our boy can also use this spell, so he confidently reveals this when the man asks. His time at the hellish boot camp wasn't a waste after all. Sadly, the professor suddenly gets the bright idea to demonstrate the spell to the class using a match. And guess who he matches up against our boy? That's right, Leonhard, the last person Gray was praying to cross paths with. The top student has no idea who our boy is right now, so he underestimates him a lot and suggests that it would be unfair to fight him since he's been trained in swordsmanship and magic before even starting school. However, the professor insists that there's no risk of anyone dying since they're only going to be using the ether bullet spell. Clearly, there's no getting out of this one, but at least Leon doesn't know that he is Ariel's special student. Well, not for long, because out of the blue, the old geezer decides to announce that Gray is the Divine Eyes Special Admission Student of the Year. As you can imagine, everyone in the class is stunned by the news, except Leon, who's just boiling with rage. What's worse is that the teacher didn't just spill all of this by accident. The cruel man knew how Leon would react, so he spilled the tea since he already doesn't like Gray. Now that the top student knows who his opponent is, he decides to take the match a lot more seriously, under the guise of wanting to properly show our boy the ropes. With a murderous glint in his eyes, he calls Gray to come right down to the front of the class for their match-up. At this point, our boy just laughs nervously, because his cover has been completely blown. Soon, the two young men are standing across from each other while the professor gives them instructions. At the moment, our boy is pretty worried because he's almost certain that he won't come out of this unscathed, especially when he only spent a few days learning magic at the boot camp. The match begins shortly and of course, Leon is the first to attack, determined to show the difference in their strength. He launches a decent ether bullet at Gray in a flash, and our boy is forced to do the same, but he's immediately blown away by the massive attack he unleashes. The two boys are astounded by the huge ether bullet that Gray shoots out with ease. Compared to our boy's blast, Leon's strike looks like a punt pebble, so the top student immediately loses all his confidence, screaming in horror as the magic ball of death speeds toward him. Luckily, the professor intervenes just in the nick of time and uses his own magic to stop Gray's ether bullet, saving Leon's life in the process. The man sighs in relief as he watches his shield stop the attack, but then all of a sudden, Gray's ether bullet shatters the barrier and causes a huge explosion in the classroom. The blast sends Leon flying, so the professor rushes to check on him even before the dust clears. The top student is literally shaking like a leaf right now, but he assures the teacher that he's fine. Thankfully, he's not hurt, but now, our boy might be in some trouble. If the barrier hadn't dampened the impact, Gray's ether bullet could have killed Leon, which is actually a big deal. Apparently, even among the professors at the academy, no one can cast an ether bullet that strong, so now, the man is very curious about this young man named Gray. He calls out to the hero, sternly asking him what the hell he just did, but right now, our boy is still trying to figure out the same thing. Thinking back to the exchange, he can't believe that they even used the same spell because Leon's ether bullet was so feeble compared to his. It makes him wonder if the ether bullet taught to those in the subjugation squad is different from what they teach at the academy. With this in mind, he curiously asks the professor if he accidentally used the wrong spell by any chance, but the man assures him that it was definitely an ether bullet. However, he makes Gray understand that the quality of his own was very different and informs him that it was by no means normal ether, but actually super, compressed ether. As you can imagine, our boy hasn't ever heard of that before, so he expresses his confusion. The man confesses that it's a power that even the professors have trouble producing. So it's mind-boggling that Gray managed to produce and reform it into a spell in a split moment. The professor goes ahead to state that there isn't a single person in the academy who can replicate what Gray just did. Just like the professor, the students are still blown away by the power they just witnessed. Whispers fill the hall as they all talk about how incredible the whole thing is. Some even feel that Gray should have been enrolled in the magic course from the start instead of specially admitting him. Despite everything the professor just explained, our boy can't help but feel that something is wrong somewhere. All the spells learned by the subjugation squad at the boot camp look just like what he unleashed a few moments ago. From what he can remember, he was even one of the ones lacking an aptitude for it, so to him, this is like the basics. And it makes him wonder if the professor is pulling his leg because he feels that anyone should be able to pull off something like that with proper practice. Hearing this, the man just starts laughing, which catches our boy off guard. He's so confused, but the professor just laughs even harder, like a maniac. He eventually stops laughing and then strangely asks our boy to consider transferring to the magic course. The old man is convinced that the kid is more talented at magic than swordsmanship, so he even offers to vouch for him if he agrees to transfer. Unfortunately, Gray immediately dashes his hopes by politely declining the offer. Our boy claims that he'll have to pass on it because he was told that he's not very good at magic. Of course, this response sounds like absolute crazy talk to the professor, especially after what he just witnessed with his naked eyes. He doesn't even get how Gray can sag something like that when he understands the ether compression technique well enough to produce super, compressed ether at such a young age. As far as he's concerned, the boy is an unparalleled prodigy, even by the academy standards. In his mind, whoever said that Gray isn't good at magic is a fool because the person clearly had no idea what they were talking about. And so, he once again asks our boy if he's sure that he doesn't want to transfer to the magic course. Gray just remains silent at this point while the other students talk about how amazing it is to see a professor who rarely compliments students to be showering someone with this much praise. When the hero fails to give him an answer, the man bluntly informs him that it would be a big loss for the world if he doesn't study magic. The man is so invested that he would even call Gray's refusal a crime against magic. For some reason, our boy laughs upon hearing this despite the deathly serious look on the professor's face. Just then, he suddenly remembers hearing something about the ether compression technique during his time at the boot camp. You see, back then, they were taught by the greatest mage to ever live in their world. On that faithful day, she told them about something called OD. It's also known as life force, but nobody knew it existed before, and as a result, it was very difficult to cast proper magic. She told them how people had to continuously compress ether within their bodies and then gather it. And even then, they could only use it when the bits happened to mix with OD by chance. This memory plays back in Gray's mind, so he immediately asks his current professor if he knows about OD. The man is instantly stumped by the question because he has no idea what that is. Seeing the professor's reaction, our boy confirms that he's currently in a world where the people are yet to learn of the existence of OD. Apparently, he was sent far back to a time when people don't know how to cast proper magic. With this in mind, he's now certain that what he learned in the subjugation squad was knowledge from the future. As you can imagine, This is a really big deal, because it could change the way the whole world uses magic, and Gray knows this as well, so he also knows that he has to be careful who he tells about it. His thoughts are interrupted when the professor asks him again if Hest finally going to transfer to the magic course. Despite the huge discovery he just made, our boy refuses for the third time in a row, claiming that he just loves swords too much. He thanks the man for his offer but passes on it, and at this point, the professor finally gives up on trying to change his mind. However, he is hopeful that Gray will reconsider his decision, so he tells the special student to come find him if he ever has a rethink, stating that any time at all is fine for that visit. Once again, the hero thanks the man for his kind offer, and the professor finally allows him to return to his seat. He's so impressed by the talent in front of him that he promises not to bother Gray anymore if he looks away during class. The man is literally a fan at this point, because he claims that he doesn't even mind if the boy gets bored and decides to leave the class. As far as he's concerned, this class is just way too basic for Gray Lee. The hero quietly makes his way back to his seat while all the other students stare at him in awe. They can't believe that the notorious Professor Carlos is the same person kissing Gray's ass right now. Well, it turns out that the professor isn't the only one sucking up to the hero, because from the looks of things, Leonhard is practically in love with Gray right now, because the guy is literally calling him Lord now. Our boy sees the top student acting this way around him, and of course, it makes him so uncomfortable that chills run down his spine. Later that day, Gray receives a note from Professor Ariel asking him to see her after class. On the way to her office, he can't help but wonder why he got summoned out of the blue. He feels that it might be Professor Carlos's doing, so he starts hoping that the red-haired lady won't advise him to change courses as well. Soon, he's right in front of her door, and immediately he knocks. She already knows it's him, so she lets him in. He's about to apologize for the intrusion when he suddenly senses a sneak attack from the side. The person tries to strike him with a sword, but his reflexes kick in at lightning speed, allowing him to block the hit and knock down the attacker. He's shocked that his body reacted on its own, but he can't think about that right now since he just got attacked. He turns to the assailant, wondering what the hell that was fire, but then as soon as he sees the girl, he can't help the feelings that he's seen her somewhere before. Gray takes a battle stance after knocking the attacker down, and then as soon as he takes a closer look, he's stunned because the girl looks very familiar. He's still trying to figure out where he's seen her before when a voice interrupts his thoughts. The person sounds impressed by what they just saw, and then our boy looks up to see that it's the red-haired professor. The lady is glad to confirm that her eyes were right about the young talent she selected, because at least now, it's clear that she didn't make a mistake. While she's bragging about her special admissions student, two of her colleagues who are in the room as well have some reservations of their own. They don't seem to like Gray very much and even suggest that the green-haired girl, Bella, didn't attack with any real intent. As such, they feel that Ariel might have even asked her to go easy on the new guy. They admit that Bella's movements were flawless, but to have her sword be knocked out of her hand so easily was just unnatural. Our boy listens to them scold the blue-haired girl and realizes that she's the famous Belle Albright from his past life. She was one of the heroes from the World Union Academy who fought against the Liquidator and was considered the greatest sorceress in the world. Of course, Professor Ariel is not pleased to hear her colleagues talking to Bella that way, so she snaps at them. The red-haired lady suggests that the both of them consider quitting as professors since they can't even tell if the girl was holding back or not. She stretches out her hand as if demanding something from them, so when they see her reaction, they immediately change their opinion. The first guy drops a stack of coins in her hand while nervously stating that they were only joking about what they said. Gray watches in confusion as this exchange happens right in front of him, and then all of a sudden, he gets a good idea of what's going on. Still, he curiously asks the professors what they're doing, and that's when Ariel informs him that they were actually gambling. Apparently, they made a bet on whether our boy would be able to fend off Bella's surprise attack or not. As you'd expect, the red-haired lady put her money on the hero, and thanks to him, she just made some really good money. For this reason, she decides to let him enjoy the spoils as well, so she tosses one of the coins at him, telling him that this is his part. At first, he doesn't know what she threw at him, so when he realizes that it's a hold coin, his eyes almost pop out of his head. A single gold coin is worth a fortune, so he's pretty blown away by it. The other professors are obviously not happy about the outcome, but they can't help the feeling that Ariel was right about Gray. It's just like the red-haired lady said, because from the exchange earlier, it looked like he deliberately didn't use his dominant arm. It's almost as if he was trying to protect his immobile arm, so they wonder if it's because of injury. This is what the first man has in mind, but his colleague isn't even sure what to think. rather than an apparent physical injury to the muscles. The first man thinks that the reason for this is more likely a deeper kind of wound. Hearing this, his colleague agrees, stating that a simple injury wouldn't cause that. Our boy listens in shock as the men analyze the situation, and he almost can't believe his ears. He's amazed that they can tell that much just from looking at him, so he expresses how surprised he is. But that's when the men remind him that they wouldn't be professors of the academy if they couldn't tell that much. Sure, to most people, it wouldn't be very obvious, but Professor Ariel was already aware about his condition during the exam. The red-haired lady has pretty much gotten all she needs from her annoying colleagues already, and since she's made them see that she was right about Gray, she bluntly tells them that it's time to leave. She can see them as they're suddenly interested in the kid, so she reminds them he's her student and makes it very clear to them that she's not going to give him up. However, the other professors don't make it too obvious that they want Gray, so they insist that they're only going to admit that he has potential for now. That being said, they inform the hero that he will fail to meet the Academy's admission standards if his wound doesn't heal in time. The two men tell Gray to keep this in mind before finally leaving the office. As you can imagine, our boy is a little threatened by what they said, because he doesn't even know when his injured arm will heal. But Professor Ariel notices him getting all anxious, so she helps him take his mind off it. Now that he nuisances are gone, she suggests that they start talking about magic, which can only mean that she's heard about his incredible display in class. Our hero takes a seat along with Professor Ariel and Bella Albright so they can have the seemingly important talk. The redhead reveals that she heard about him using super, compressed ether in Professor Carlos's class. He's not too surprised that she already knew, but it's still pretty intriguing. In response, the experienced professor reveals that Carlos came to her office earlier, and even asked that she hand Gray over to the magic course without consulting him. Of course, Ariel didn't do that, which is why they're even sitting here having the conversation right now. She declined Carlos's request because as far as she's concerned, Gray is more suited to wield the sword than magic. The hero is pretty shocked when she says this because he literally uses magic that nobody in this world knows how to use. But for some reason, Professor Ariel doesn't think that he looks like he's good at magic compression. To her, he doesn't even show signs of having practiced it before. At this point, Gray realizes that he's dealing with a professor that's truly on another level from the others. It turns out that her divine eye is at it again, and she managed to see right through the facade that Carlos couldn't. All she needs to do is look at him to get the truth, so he realizes that it would be best for him not to lie to her. With this in mind, he calmly takes a sip of his drink and tells her that she's absolutely correct. The red-haired lady is glad to see that he's cooperating, so she asks him to tell her what sort of trick he's using to fool everyone else. She knows for a fact that he's not really using ether compression magic, so she urges him to confide in her. She promises not to divulge the information to anyone, and even offers to reward him if he lets her in on his secret. She's desperate to get answers, but it's not even for her. The reason she needs to is because of Bella. Of course, the hero is shocked that she would even say this because Bella is literally the sorcerer who taught him the very same magic in his previous life. He's so shocked that he almost addresses her as the sorceress, but he quickly dodges the bullet. Gray is truly stunned because he knows just how good Bella is. Professor Ariel can understand his confusion, so she decides to explain the situation. Apparently, even though the girl is a genius at magic theory, she's far from the best when it comes to actually using the magic. For some reason, the girl just can't use the ether compression technique properly, and it's the same reason she can't create super compressed ether. Hearing this, Gray suddenly remembers what he heard about Bella Albright being a late bloomer. She might have been the most powerful sorcerer in his previous life, but her time at the academy wasn't actually impressive. After hearing what the professor just said, he now understands why that was the case. Moving on, the professor goes on to reveal what she noticed. From what she heard from Carlos, when Gray used the super compressed ether, he didn't even look like he compressed ether at all. And so, if there's a way to use super compressed ether without actually compressing ether, then it means Bella won't have to be sent to Professor Bradley. As soon as Gray hears this name, the gears in his head start turning. He suddenly remembers the man known as Professor Varian Bradley, and judging by the horrified look on his face, it's pretty clear that the man might be a problem for students. Seeing the look on his face, Professor Ariel is intrigued that he knows of the man. Well, it's practically impossible not to know him since he's extremely infamous. After all, he has conducted countless experiments of humans, murdering many in the process. On top of that, he has caused magic disasters that resulted in the death of tens of thousands of people. To cut the long story short, Professor Varian Bradley is history's worst magic criminal. The fact that Ariel talked about Bella being sent to the man puzzles our boy a bit, because he can't believe that the man still hasn't been caught in this period. Sadly, That's the case, and if Bella can't create super, compressed ether by the end of the year, she'll be sent to him where she will undergo surgery. As you can imagine, Gray is mortified by this information, so he immediately informs the professor that it's likely a bad idea. It turns out that Ariel even knows that it's not wise. Even though the surgery is under the pretense of enhancing her magic abilities, it's actually human experimentation, and she is fully aware. Professor Ariel knows about his shady ways already, but his activities haven't been made public yet. But then again, rumor has it that he's the reason some people have died, while others were left broken. It's dangerous and scary to the blue-haired girl, but she doesn't have much of a choice because she will be expelled by the end of the year if she can't use super, compressed ether. Of course, Professor Ariel doesn't like the situation, and she'd even prefer that Bella quit the academy to having that man mess with her body. Now, our boy is really tempted to tell them the truth. However, the magic he knows is knowledge that does not even exist at this time. As such, telling them might end up changing the course of history. But then again, seeing how terrified Bella is right now, he suddenly remembers what happened during the battle against the Liquidator. He remembers how the alien invader overpowered them and defeated humanity's last hope with ease. With this in mind, he immediately decides to help the blue-haired girl, because as far as he's concerned, that hellhole people call the future is much better off changed. Gray makes up his mind and promises to teach her how to use super, compressed ether. The scene shifts, and the next thing we see is that our boy is already training Bella in the arena. He quickly concludes his lecture with her, admitting that he just gave her all the knowledge he has about magic. Just as they agreed, he reminds them not to tell anyone that he taught her this. Of course, Ariel intends to honor her word, so she even creates a signed magic contract, which states that they would literally die if they break the deal. Now that they've gotten that out of the way, he asks them what they think about what he just taught Bella. In response, the red-haired professor reveals that just learning about OD alone blew her mind. However, the knowledge of magic he revealed is beyond that. As for Bella, she thinks that it's brief yet well organized. His lecture was pretty good for her, to the point that she felt like she was listening to a magic class from hundreds of years into the future. In other words, just hearing Gray's explanation has definitely advanced the history of magic by 100 years. Of course, our boy doesn't tell her that he just remixed the lecture she gave him 10 years from now. The red-haired lady admits that she couldn't even judge properly, so she's not even sure what Gray said is true. In response, Bella suggests that there's a good chance the theory is correct. After all, nothing he said contradicts the current theory of magic. But then again, the quickest way to find out is to test it. So, she writes down a spell and shows it to him, feeling that it should work if everything he said is true. She proceeds to demonstrate what she believes is her full strength according to that theory. But this leaves our boy pretty anxious, because the last time he checked, Bella's full strength is said to be capable of burning down an entire city. Moreover, she was said to be unable to properly control her powerful magic output. The timid young girl lifts her staff to cast the spell using Gray's teachings, and before anyone can even process what's going on, a mind-blowing blast follows. Our boy tries to stop her from using her power, but she unleashes the terrifying blast of flames in the blink of an eye. They all take cover to protect themselves from the explosion, but then Gray looks up and discovers something really strange. He looks up at the overwhelming power and sees the flames suddenly flowing back to her staff. At this point, our boy realizes that she just saved his life, because if she hadn't taken control of the power run that split second, then he'd probably have been toast. All the flames from the devastating inferno go right back to her staff, and the blue-haired girl instantly expresses her excitement. She's so proud of herself for successfully controlling her power, and once she's feeling pretty confident, she uses the flames to conjure a massive dragon. For the first time since entering the academy, Bella Albright can finally enjoy using magic, but the final is short-lived because she suddenly runs out of ether. She starts feeling really dizzy and collapses instantly. Bella falls face flat on the floor, so Gray rushes to check on her. He calls out to her, trying to wake her up, but Professor Ariel tells him to just let her rest, explaining that she fell asleep because she ran out of ether. Hearing this, our boy is a lot more relaxed, so he just smiles at Bella, feeling pretty proud. Her spell is still active even after she passed out, so the professor takes some time to admire her magic. To her, it was a really marvelous sight, and she's really impressed that Bella managed to put together magic on that scale in such a short amount of time. But just then, the half-conscious girl mumbles something about how Gray's theory is what's truly amazing. If only she knew it was her own theory. Now that she can easily create super compressed ether, she no longer needs the surgery, so Ariel can't wait to tell Bradley that they won't be needing his services anymore. The red-haired professor is glad that Bella no longer needs the surgery, but she's even more grateful that the girl didn't lose her magic control. When she says this, our boy is pretty intrigued, so he asks the lady what she's talking about. At this point, Ariel explains that Bradley's surgery comes at the expense of control even though it increases one's magical output. Even though the details of how it works are a secret, Ariel knows for sure that the surgery forcibly breaks one's limiter. This information is quite new to our boy, but it also makes a lot of sense because in his previous life, he remembers that Bella couldn't control her magic. Well, thanks to Gray, Bella doesn't have to go through that anymore since she can now create super, compressed ether. Since he's done his part, Ariel states that she will now fulfill her own part of the contact. First of all, she would like to help fix his arm and she has a special type of magic she wants to use on it. Of course, our boy is stunned to hear this, but he doesn't refuse, so he lets her do her thing. The professor releases a surge of magic into his right hand and the magic fills the air, leaving our boy speechless. He watches in awe as she attempts to heal his hand, and by the time she's done, she asks him how he feels. The moment of truth arrives as Gray tries to move his fingers. Sure enough, he's able to control his hand, so he's truly astounded. He thanks the professor for what she just did, revealing that a magical healing potion could cure him. To this, the lady just scoffs and then tells him to never compare her nerve-restoring magic to his average magic potions. She trusts her skills, but she's also curious to know if his hand moves the way it did before, so she tells him to try swinging a sword. Our boy is more than happy to try this out because it's been ages since he held a sword with his dominant arm. He takes the first swing and is a little surprised by the outcome, so he tries a couple more slashes and he remains speechless. At this point, he informs the professor that his hand doesn't move as well as it used to. He explains this to Ariel, but she's not even surprised. She actually suspected that she might have repaired his nerves, but she also knows that her magic cannot heal the wounds in his soul. Gray is a little taken aback when she starts talking about his soul, so she assures him that he heard right. Today's magic knowledge hasn't proven the existence of one's soul yet, but she believes that it does. After all, she can see it with her divine eye. And even now, from what she can see, Gray's soul is slowly healing. She assures him that it will heal naturally as long as he doesn't overexert himself. He's not sure how to achieve this, so he asks the professor if this means that he should refrain from practicing with swords. Thankfully, that's not the case. Ariel assures him that it's fine for him to exercise as he normally would, but at the moment, she's even more concerned in finding out what kind of swordsmanship could harm one's soul this much. Hearing this, the hero just laughs nervously, hoping that she doesn't start asking too many questions. Apparently, Ariel is aware of someone who uses a swordsmanship that uses one's soul to move the sword, but Gray doesn't know who she's talking about, so she reveals that it's Amy White. She figures that our boy might know Amy, but he's just stunned because he doesn't get why she's talking about the Sword Saint. In the present timeline, he shouldn't even know Amy. The professor notices the confusion on his face, so she realizes that she might be wrong. Her guess was wrong, but in her defense, the way Gray wields the sword gave her the impression that he learned it from Amy. But on second thought, she admits that he is slightly different. As such, she figures that the person he trained under might be a bit more skilled than Amy. However, she's confident that the girl will be just as skilled as Gray's master in a few years. After listening to the professor's multiple theories, our boy is just blown away that she managed to think that far in such a short time. Either way, he finally reveals that he learned swordsmanship at a dojo in his hometown. Still, he knows that he needs to change the topic now because if he lets the conversation continue, he might end up spilling everything. With this in mind, he asks her if it's even possible for someone's soul to be damaged because of swordsmanship. In response, the professor explains that ordinary swordsmanship cannot do this. To begin with, she doesn't believe that something ordinary can defeat an ogre general with just one slash, not to mention cutting down surrounding ogres. Apparently, Professor Ariel already knew of his feat, and this explains a lot. She somehow found out about his past, and so now, she's already won the bet she made earlier. She reveals that she was shown some of the remains left at the scene. She found the sight magnificent because even the most sophisticated cleaving magic couldn't have done that. That being said, Professor Ariel reveals that she knows about the mysterious power within him, and then asks him if he used it. The jig is up at this point, but he's curious as to whether she can see the power with her eye, and she confirms this, revealing that she can even see the power leaking through the chain door. The response sends chills down Gray's spine as the memory of that ominous door flashes across his mind. It's not something someone can just guess, so now, he's certain that the red-haired lady can actually see it. It's not a new thing for her though, because she's seen power like this before, but it's not exactly the same despite having a similar vibe. Our boy is taken aback by this because he didn't think there were people with similar power to him. At this point, Professor Ariel reveals that they do exist, but she also admits that she's not sure they are human. From what she's heard, the one she's talking about is the Liquidator, and the moment she reveals this, The hero's eyes widen in horror because he has no idea why that name is being mentioned in this time period. Seeing that he knows that futuristic kind of magic theory, it's not so surprising though. Hearing this, Gray confirms that what he's been using is really knowledge from the future. However, no one has truly figured out that part yet. Just then, the professor asks him how much he knows about the liquidator, and this leaves him dumbfounded for a second. Regardless, he tells her that all he knows is that the celestial being is an extremely dangerous threat to humanity. As far as Gray is concerned, the liquidator has to be stopped before he appears, because if that happens, then he must be destroyed no matter what it takes. For some reason, the professor thinks that his explanation is a little extreme, but she does agree that the liquidator is dangerous. Even so, Varian Bradley seems intent on continuing his experiments, and she reveals this to our guy. As you can imagine, Gray is taken aback at this point because he's not even sure how Varian is related to this. Apparently, the professor is convinced that there's a connection. As far as the lady is concerned, the liquidator is the very being that the man is trying to summon. This definitely comes as a shock to the MC because the last time he checked, the liquidator was supposed to be an alien. He's blown away by the fact that the liquidator was actually created by a man because no one had ever mentioned anything like that. But then again, the Academy in the last timeline acted as if they knew exactly where the liquidator would appear. He remembers the war and how they had predicted the location of the battlefield. Memories of their fleet heading over there flash across his mind, and so now, it starts to make a lot of sense. It's a truly shocking discovery, but it's now looking very likely that the Academy was involved in summoning the World Enders all along. Now that Gray knows what's really going on, he strongly suggests that Varian's dangerous experiment be stopped immediately. Professor Ariel agrees with him, of course, but the look on her face suggests that it's not going to be an easy task. The red-haired lady also wishes for the experiment to be stopped, but there's a major obstacle in the way. Unfortunately, the person running the project is a professor just like her, so she doesn't have the authority to shut him or his experiments down. Sure, she doesn't have the power, so she already pushed the higher-ups to cancel Varian, but they refuse to listen to her. Hearing this, Gray immediately demands to know who exactly these higher-ups are because he can't understand why anyone would sit back and watch someone start an apocalypse under their noses. He's definitely ready to go meet the authorities, but the professor sadly reveals that she is not allowed to reveal their identity to him either. She wishes she could, but she doesn't even have the authority to do. The bottom line is that no one can force the experiment to stop unless the orders come from above. As you can imagine, Gray is disappointed that he couldn't even get a name from her. And now, it's looking like the Academy's leadership is more tangled than he thought initially. The situation is looking pretty bleak, but then all of a sudden, an idea pops up in his mind. It is already clear that the higher-ups don't want to stop Varian, but if the man in question is a criminal, that should change things. This is our boy's train of thought right now, because he remembers that the man in question killed tens of thousands with his illegal experiments in the previous world. If that was the case back then, it shouldn't be much different now. The MC knows where the mad scientist's lab is, so he feels that they should take action right away. With this in mind, he informs the professor that he knows where Varian is conducting his illegal experiments and proposes that they try to catch him red-handed. After all, that's the best way to prove that he needs to be shut down. Sadly, before he even finishes stating this idea, the professor explains that this won't work either. As you can imagine, Gray is so confused when he hears this, so he asks her why they can't bust the mad scientist. Apparently, entering an academy professor's research facility without permission is a very serious crime on its own over here. That being said, the red-haired lady makes him understand that they'll be the ones getting locked up if they are unable to produce hard evidence after breaking into the lab. And so, she straight up asks Gray if he's trying to say that he already has proof of Varian's crime already. Sadly, our boy doesn't have any concrete evidence at the moment. He's working with the events that occurred in his previous life, so he can't say for sure that it's the same now. So, he doesn't say anything, confirming that he's got nothing on the shady professor. At this point, Professor Ariel suggests that they shelve this whole issue for the time being. This entire conversation just makes our boy understand that the professor's hands are tied, even though she knows that Varian and his experiments are dangerous. There's really nothing he can do at this point, so he assures her that he understands the situation. Now that they've got that out of the way, the lady suggests that they pay more attention to the more important matters at hand, which are his powers. She knows that he probably wants to learn how to be able to control it, so she offers to help him with that. Gray is blown away when she says this because he didn't even know that she could do that. Seeing the excitement in his eyes, she informs him that there's actually a professor in the academy who is very good at dealing with unknown forces. The man goes by the name Heathcote Longfellow, and Professor Ariel reveals this to Gray. Our boy is blown away by this because he's actually heard of the man before. It turns out that Heathcote Longfellow is the one who trained the Sword Saint, so it's a pretty big deal to be tutored by a man like that. Professor Ariel can tell that he's stoked about it, and she's not even surprised because she had a feeling that news would catch his interest. That being said, she offers to arrange for him to start private training with the man the following day. Of course, our boy doesn't have any issues with this, so he begs her to see to it. The very reason Gray came to the academy was so that he could master this mysterious power inside of him, but he definitely didn't expect to find a lead this quickly. The scene shifts, and the next thing we see is a very intense training session between the powerful professor. Our boy is already receiving private lessons from the one and only Heathcote Longfellow, so it's a really big deal for him. At first glance, you'd think these two are in the middle of a tough sparring session based on the strained looks on their faces. But we suddenly get to see the full picture and learn that they're actually running at insane speeds through the woods. As you can imagine, our boy doesn't get why they're doing this, but he doesn't complain and just follows the professor's lead. Surprisingly, the man is somehow able to sense that Gray's mind is wandering. This is not something that he's ready to entertain, so he tells Gray to pick up the pace since he's clearly not focused enough if he has room for stray thoughts. He demands that our boy keeps running until his body is at the absolute limit. Heathcote Longfellow insists that our boy keep running and only stop once he's burned away every drop of physical strength inside him. Because only then will his soul's power awaken. The professor informs him that they will not touch the sword as long as the MC still has even a scrap of stamina left in him. In other words, Gray will have to be on the brink of death before his new tutor will be satisfied. For most people, this might just be a deal breaker, but our boy knows what he came here for, so he's not going to shy away. After all, if this is the training that the legendary Heathcote Longfellow chose for him, then it must surely have a meaning. But then again, he can't shake the feeling that while he's here running laps, Varian is already carrying out his experiments to summon the Arbiter. He really wants to focus solely on the training as the professor demanded, but Gray is not even sure if this is what he should really be doing right now. Well, despite having these doubts at the start, our boy keeps going back every day, and after a week, he reports back to Professor Ariel. He goes to see her in her office then, and she asks him how it's been going with Heathcote. Of course, our boy takes the opportunity to say what's been going on. He tells her how it's mostly been running and adds that they do a bit of sword drills at the very end. Regardless, he does feel a bit stronger, and he admits this too. Of course, the lady isn't surprised to hear this because all of this sounds exactly like Professor Heathcote Longfellow. Their discussion is suddenly interrupted when someone suddenly knocks on the door. Professor Ariel lets him in, and the man gives her a letter that just arrived for her. He hands her the sealed envelope and takes his leave. Gray just watches the whole thing play out, looking all confused, but then the lady opens the letter to start reading through, and the look on her face informs him that there's something wrong, so he asks her what's up. Rather than telling him, she simply turns the paper to his face for him to see for himself. And by the time he sees it, his eyes widen in horror because the whole thing is just a report that Bella Albright has succeeded in producing super compressed ether. It appears that she has indeed gained a power closely resembling it. However, upon examination, it's clear that she has not actually compressed it. As a result, her new ability cannot be recognized as super compressed either. Therefore, the contract remains valid, and the operation will proceed as scheduled. This whole letter was sent by Varian Bradley, and after reading it, Gray is absolutely furious. As far as he's concerned, this is insanity, and the professor agrees with him. So, she suggests that Bradley is determined to force Bella into surgery by all means, even if she doesn't need it anymore. The mad scientist wants to make sure that he achieves his goals. Hearing this, our boy is pretty worried about Bella and wonders if she can refuse to partake in the experiment. Well, the contract is airtight, and the red-haired lady explains this to Gray. It turns out that the only way Bella can get out of doing the surgery is if Bradley himself voids it. That being said, Bella's only choices are expulsion or the operation. In other words, if she refuses, she'll be kicked out of the academy. Of course, this is horrifying news for our boy, so he expresses his displeasure, slammed his fist on the table. Seeing that this is the way things are going, Professor Ariel tells Gray that she needs his help, and then all of a sudden, she asks him to tell her where Bradley's lab is. Apparently, the letter he just sent to her was some kind of trigger that is enough to change her mind. Remember when she said that they can't enter another professor's lab? Well, now the lady is suddenly fine with busting the mad scientist because if they are blue to expose him as a criminal, then his contract will be null and void. As soon as Gray hears this, the worried look on his face is suddenly replaced with a smirk. Sure, he's excited about this, but he's also curious as to why she suddenly changed her mind. After all, she was the same person who just said that it would be too dangerous to go after him without proof. Hearing this, she simply tells him that they're just going to have to find the evidence they need. She makes this bold statement and then informs Gray that she's putting her faith in him right now. You can tell that she's nervous about this whole plan, but then again, she realizes that she's actually even put her faith in him from the start. She was bold enough to do this because her divine eye had already told her that our boy was telling the truth the whole time. Apparently, she's known this for a while now, but it just took her this long to get herself to finally admit it. Our boy listens to her saying all of this, and it makes him feel very good about their plan. Professor Ariel confesses this to him, and then finally asks him to show her the way. It's clear that he knows the things that can help them, so she urges him to share in order to bring Bradley's crime to light together. And judging by the look on our boy's face, it's pretty clear that he's all in. Now that they're definitely on the same page, our boy finally reveals that the evil professor's laboratory is located in the mountains near the village of Torul. As you can imagine, the red-haired lady is already familiar with this place. It's not the first time she's hearing about it, and she definitely remembers Bradley Varian having a laboratory there that was authorized by the Academy. She confirms this, which leaves Gray pretty surprised, because why would anyone do illegal experiments in an authorized lab? Well, the professor doesn't think he should even be surprised, because as far as she's concerned, there's no better place to conduct illegal experiments if not there. I mean, no one will bat an eyelid even if he stays there for too long, since it's a place that's been reserved for him and his research. On top of that, no other professor in the Academy has the authority to interfere with his lab, so the Torwal Mountains are just perfect for the mad scientist. Now though, that's about to change because Ariel is determined to get evidence of his crimes, since they won't be charged with breaking into his lab that way. While they're plotting and scheming on how to bust the evil professor, Bella interrupts them with a knock on the door. Of course, Professor Ariel lets her in, so the blue-haired girl comes in with a paper in her hand. From the look on her face, you can tell that she's kinda nervous. She reveals that she just received the letter, and before she can even say anything else, Ariel snatches the envelope from her. The red-haired lady tells her not to worry about anything, promising to take over from here. Of course, Bella doesn't know what the letter is even about yet, so she's pretty confused when the professor says this. She tries to ask Ariel what she means, wondering if her professor is planning to fight Bradley Varian for her sake. Going after the mad scientist is already risky enough, but Ariel seems to be doing this all by herself, which makes it even more scary to Bella. Ariel senses how worried her blue-haired student is right now, and she just finds it amusing. She simply scoffs in response before informing the worried girl that she alone is more than enough to handle the task. As you can imagine, this definitely gets Bella very anxious, especially since it's all happening because of her. She is pretty terrified now, and even our boy is starting to get concerned, so before the professor can leave the room, he calls out to her, begging her to wait before telling her that he's going with her. As soon as he says this, Bella doesn't even think twice before announcing that she will go too. The girl is determined to help out since all of this is happening because of her. It's her problem after all, so she insists on following them. As you'd expect, Professor Ariel is not comfortable with this sudden change of plans, so before the students can even say anything else, she stops them right in their tracks. And then, she reminds them that the person they're talking about is not some ordinary man. He's an academy professor, and not only that, he's also a lunatic who has repeatedly conducted dangerous human experiments. Professor Ariel points out all of this just in case the two ambitious students have forgotten so soon. There's no telling what Bradley Varian will do to them if he catches them poking their noses in his business. He's just that dangerous and erratic, so the red-haired professor bluntly makes it clear to them that she cannot let the both of them go to such a place. Ariel makes these points to discourage them from following her to the Torwal Mountains, but sadly, her efforts backfire. For some reason, rather than seeing reason with her, Gray feels that everything she said suggests that they come with her. Since even she knows what a monster Bradley Varian is, it just makes even more sense for her to take them along. Going alone is too dangerous even for her as far as Gray is concerned. In his mind, he should definitely be able to be of some help to her if he uses the same power he used to take down the ogre general. Besides, if Professor Ariel disappears, then our boy will get expelled automatically because he's a Divine Eye admission student. She's the very reason he's still in the academy, so if anything happens to her, then his chances of actually finishing to become a hero will be gone. Gray makes all of these valid points and then concludes by begging the professor to at least let them decide their fate. Her actions affect them tremendously, so he believes that they should also have a say in it. At this point, Gray and Bella go quiet and wait anxiously as the professor contemplates everything they just said. She's definitely not planning to be so rigid, so she quietly considers all our boy has said, and after a brief moment of silence, she gives in. I mean, with everything they just said, It seems like they'd just still come even if she told them not to. And so, there's really no point stopping them. That being said, the professor agrees to let them go with her, but under one condition. Hearing this, our boy eagerly waits to hear the terms, and then the lady tells them that they are to prioritize their own safety first no matter what happens. She reveals this non-negotiable condition to them and sternly asks them if they understand completely. Of course, they are pretty fine with the terms, so they loudly confirm that they understand. If that's what it will take for them to be involved on this important mission, they don't mind the terms. Sure enough, after that deal they made, Professor Ariel takes them along and the scene shifts. For a lab that's supposed to be a secret, the building is pretty massive. Anyway, the trio arrives after the moon comes up, and while they're hiding in the bushes, Bella keeps trying to wrap her head around the fact that the man is really doing his illegal experiments in this place. It's probably strange to her as well, but that's what it is. Professor Ariel confirms that this is really the place and reminds her of the objective. Now that they've arrived, the next course of action is to look for evidence of Varian's illegal experiments. Just to be 100% sure, she asks Gray to confirm everything she just said, and our boy assures her that they're on the same page. He definitely remembers this place from his past life, and he doesn't have a single doubt in his mind. Seeing how confident he is, Bella decides that she doesn't have any reason not to trust him. She's all for taking down the mad scientist, but she's still not sure that they can actually gather any evidence without getting in any trouble. That's her major concern now that they're here and she's seen the kind of place they're breaking into. Ariel can sense that the blue-haired girl is worried, so she attempts to calm her down. As far as she knows, Varian should be at the Magic Society's conference right now, so she's pretty convinced that he's not here at the moment. Still, the fact that the mad scientist isn't around doesn't necessarily mean that sneaking in will be a walk in the park or anything like that. She has a strong feeling that the entrance is rigged with all sorts of traps, so going in through the front is not really an option anymore. With that fact established, she concludes that they'll have to bust in through the side wall. Such a move has its own consequences as well, so Bella is pretty worried still. At this point, it's kinda obvious that Miss Blue Hair over here doesn't really have the stomach for a mission like this. She's been on edge since they arrived and worried about everything, so the professor reminds her that they came here to break into an academy-authorized lab. That in itself is already a crime, so whatever approach they take is still likely going to land them in trouble, especially if they're not able to find any concrete evidence. Either way, the professor tells her that she doesn't have to go if she doesn't want to. After all, she was the one who insisted on coming, so if she's no longer feeling up for it, she can always go back. Ariel is still very open to going on this mission by herself, so she wouldn't mind if they change their minds. She makes this very clear to Bella, but it just motivates the timid girl to stand strong. She claims that she's still going, but a part of her still doesn't get if all of this is worth it. As far as she knows, Professor Ariel is doing this for someone like her, so she doesn't think they should be going this far. However, Ariel simply informs her that that is where she's got it wrong, because stopping Varian's experiments is for the sake of the entire world. Right now, Bella doesn't understand the gravity of letting the mad scientist get his way, so Gray explains that countless people will die if they don't stop Varian. He says this but quickly corrects himself, claiming that the whole world will be sacrificed if they don't stop the evil professor. Of course, Bella doesn't understand what they're talking about, so she expresses her confusion. She was already worried before, but after hearing all this, she's probably gonna have a panic attack. The professor can foresee this already, and that's not what they need on this kind of mission right now, so she tells Bella that Gray is probably just exaggerating. Nevertheless, she agrees with what he said about how the mad scientist needs to be stopped at all cost. She knows that the girl might still be bothered, so she keeps telling Bella not to worry, assuring her that they're here for her and will literally put their lives on the line for her. Ariel says these words with a reassuring smile etched on her face, hoping to calm the timid student. Once they're able to get all the doubts and worries out of the way, the professor finally gives the signal for them to move out. The three of them blast off with blistering force toward the lab, determined to find the evidence they need to take down Varian. Ariel casts an insanely powerful spell mid-air and instantly unleashes a devastating blast that blows a hole in the side wall of the facility. So much for being stealthy. The blast is truly incredible as it leads to a mind-blowing explosion that almost sends them flying. The force from the blast is so much that Gray barely manages to avoid being thrown off his feet. Of course, he also didn't expect a blast of that magnitude, so he finds it amusing. Ariel just had to do something way over the top. Anyway, now that they've got an opening, they make their way to the freshly opened hole in the wall. It's a miracle the facility is still standing after taking such a devastating blast, but I guess that's a good thing. Lee takes the lead since he's the one who knows the way, but as soon as he steps into the lab, his eyes widen in horror. Our boy is instantly met with a very shocking surprise. Remember, this lab was supposed to be filled with enough evidence to enable them shut down Varian's illegal experiments. Well, what our boy finds is even more horrifying than what he imagined. It's literally a huge prison with several cells lined up one after the other. Inside these cages, there are human beings bound in chains, and those of them who are not already corpses look like they're on the brink of death. Most of the bodies are covered in blood scattered all over inside the cells. Clearly, they're now 100% sure that Varian is an evil piece of trash. This is proof that he's been carrying out inhumane research, and it wasn't even that hard to find. Looks like there's no need to make an effort searching for the evidence they came for. There's literally so many dismembered corpses in the cells that it's sickening, and Bella is probably doing her best not to freak out right now. The professor is speechless at first, but then she's finally able to organize her thoughts. For her, just a glance is enough to see 14 forbidden spells that have been used on these poor victims. Using such spells is undeniably a criminal offense, which just shows how terrible Varian is. There isn't even a need to mention the unauthorized human experiments, as far as she's concerned, because merely using these forbidden spells is an equally serious offense in the eyes of the Academy. They're still taking a tour of the horrific research facility when they suddenly come across some more disturbing stuff on the other side. Of course, they all go to investigate, and that's when they get a better view of this ominous-looking magic circle on the floor. It's surrounded with lit candles, which is even more creepy. At first glance, it looks like some sort of altar, so after getting close to it, they're a little confused. They've obviously seen more than enough proof that the scumbag professor is up to no good, so Bella asks what they should do now, because their original plan was to leave with evidence. However, she doesn't think it's right to leave just like that, because they also need to rescue the people who are trapped in the cells. At least the ones who are still alive. Gray is the first to respond to her, reminding her that they shouldn't stay here for too long. He's afraid that Varian might return and find them there if they're not careful, but before he can even finish explaining this, he's suddenly cut off. Our boy is interrupted by an ominous voice in the shadows, and that's definitely not a good sign. As you've probably guessed already, this voice belongs to the one and only Bradley Varian, who sounds really amused by the presence of unexpected visitors. They were just talking about him, so he tauntingly asks if they were calling for him. The evil professor slowly walks out from the darkness, and his colleague is the first to confront him. With a confident smirk on her face, Ariel asks him what happened to his conference. After all, that's where he's supposed to be right now. She calls his name, and that's when we finally get to see the face of this notoriously dangerous man. After Varian reveals himself, our boy is taken aback because the man actually isn't supposed to be here. He doesn't understand what went wrong, but he braces himself for anything that might happen. The evil scientist finally responds to Ariel, revealing that he arranged for a double to attend the conference in his stead. Apparently, he has an important experiment to do here, so he couldn't leave. The Twisted Man explains this, which leaves Ariel a little puzzled because she doesn't know what he's talking about. He confirms that the experiment is way too important, stating that he even managed to get some fresh materials for it. By fresh materials, this madman is actually referring to the human corpses he's hung in one of the rooms. He claims that he wanted to use them while they're still fresh, but now that he's got visitors, he's changed his plans. Varian says this with a truly terrifying look on his face that sends chills down their spines. He doesn't mind changing his plans though, since he wanted materials with more potential for magic than an average person anyway. Clearly, he's basically telling them that they're his next victims, and they definitely understand. Varian admits that he doesn't know how they caught wind of his experiments since it's a secret, and he's also pretty sure that they didn't tell anyone they were coming here. That being said, he concludes that no one would suspect a thing if the three of them suddenly went missing, making it very clear to them that he's ready for them. That's it for this episode. Until next time.